if we wanted to hit on a controversial topic first, we'll hit on. Well, like it's kind of funny because like
all of them
sometimes-
are controversial.
Well, like every
them.
single time I have somebody on, like people have tried to coach me on, like, oh yeah, when you're doing a podcast and you're interviewing somebody, you should ask them about their family, their friends, their career, and then get into the political side. And it's like, dude, everybody knows why you're here. Like we're gonna talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Beach Drive for a second.
Beach Drive, all right.
I recently had somebody on, actually one of my first episodes, the local business owner. He came on. He talked a little bit about surveying of the area for Beach Drive. And hey, I mean, I get it, but my whole thing is like,
So the path. So this is pretty contentious for some folks. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So there's a couple of things I'd like to just go ahead and just get out of the way so that everybody's on the same page that's listening to this podcast. And this is factual. This is not like, I'm not spinning this in any way. I'm not a very good spinster. I'm very much like, hey, these are the facts. You know, I
take it or leave it. I don't care.
This is how I make decisions. Is I look at facts and figures. And so this was an appropriation. An appropriation is completely different than any other grant that a city can get. An appropriation from Congress has to be voted on by the House and the Senate and then approved by the governor because it's part of a law, right? It's literally a law that gets made. So to undo that, it has to go back through the same process. So just like every other law, it's held to the same standard. So an appropriation is basically a law that is, you will spend money and this is how you will do it. That's what it boils down to, right?
Roger, tracking.
I mean, I know that there's some lawyers out there listening to this right now going, no, he's wrong. And I understand that, but I've got to keep this at some kind of 100,000 foot level in order to get through the podcast, right? So there are going to be some things that just, you know, are not 100% true. But again, you get into the lawyer discussions and it's like, you know, the vast majority of your listeners will have their eyes glazed over by the time we're done with this. So money was given to us by the state to be spent between Frankfurt Avenue and 6th Street on a road that borders St. Andrews Bay. So we can spend the money, and it's $8 million. We can spend the money, and it's a performance appropriation, which means we got to spend the money up front, and then they'll reimburse us for it, right? So we can spend the money anywhere in the city as long as it's between Frankfurt Avenue and 6th Street. For a multi-use path, sidewalk, boardwalk, whatever you want to call it, path, some kind of pedestrian thing, as long as it borders St. Andrews Bay. There's only one road in the city that meets that requirement, right? Yeah. This is how appropriations work, and I found this out because we had an appropriation for Lindenwood, which is in Ward 3.
Yeah.
And when I first got into office, I'm not necessarily pro-path.
Yeah.
Right.
I am.
When I first got into office, there was these folks brought this to me and said, hey, here's $8 million. You can use it elsewhere in the city. And I was like, sweet. Because there's a huge group of people that were like, we don't want it. Right. And so I'm looking at it as the number one thing my constituents said was that we want our roads fixed. I'm like, well, hey, here's $8 million. I'm pretty sure that we could use that elsewhere. Right. And so I started talking with folks, and lawyers said, no, you can't use it in Ward 3. You have to use it for this path between Frankfurt and 6th Street. So I went to FDOT. I was like, hey, FDOT, how does this work? You know, like, can I use this money elsewhere?
Yeah.
And they said, no, you absolutely can't. It has to be used between Frankfurt and 6th Street. And so it kind of killed. There was a few more conversations I had with people about that, and every single one of them said basically the same thing. So I kind of gave up on the idea of using that money elsewhere. So
I think you see a lot of good things that come out of paths. You know, I'm not trying to interrupt, but Or
Statistically speaking.
rails trails over in Lynn Haven.
Yep.
And I've said it, and people disagree with me, and they can do whatever they want. I run that trail almost every freaking day of the week, and
They're
I have
good for communities.
I have not seen this homeless problem that I have not seen the crime rate that everybody talked about. I haven't seen any of that. It was one of those things where everybody just like, they jumped on this bandwagon, they whipped it to death, and then they tried to make it seem like it was a waste of money. It's a great, dude, when that path gets done on Beach Drive, you're going to see what I'm talking about if you haven't seen Rails Trails. Tons of families. Thanksgiving. After
Turkey trot.
Dude, bro,
Yep.
I got out
I
there.
used to do them when I could.
I got out there on Rails Trails and I ran that morning before lunch or anything. There were families out there, some that I'd never even seen before. They're out there, they're just walking, a family, and it's a good, safe place to fellowship with neighbors and family without having to worry about it. Because, dude, sidewalks are freaking. That's the one thing, and I'll say this, and then I'll be off my rant for a second. The one thing that I didn't like about, so I used to live off of 19th Street. I had a townhouse that was there, and I used to run down Balboa, and I used to jump on Beach Drive. I would run Beach Drive down into St. Andrews and come back to Frankfurt, and then run back up, and then to 19th Street. One of the things I used to hate was along Beach Drive, the sidewalk gets eroded to where you have those lips.
Yep.
I have caught lips on that sidewalk that has borderline sent me to like urgent care, where it's been like I've got scars like from, because I used to run a lot.
Me too.
And so and it's like one of those things where I've caught a lip on Beach Drive, and some of those lips are around tree roots and stuff like that. So when this thing came up on the path for having out closer on the beach side, I was like, that is genius. We need that.
You don't
along.
stop. Like, there's no roads
it's freaking awesome. And then I know some of those phases are supposed to go over to SweetBay and down into St. Andrews, right? Like eventually some of those.
Yeah, there's already a sidewalk on Frankfurt, but we've got approval from the state to do one that's north of 23rd Street. On Frankfurt.
Yep. So the only thing that I didn't like about that, now again, I don't live in Panama City, so I don't really have a say there. But at the same time, the only thing I didn't like about it was, well, we're going to build this path, but we're not going to do anything with the sidewalk. And my whole thing about that was, so you're just going to let that sidewalk sit there. Nobody really maintains a sidewalk. The sidewalk stays cracked, and then you got that erosion that I was talking about and everything like that. Nobody has maintained that for a very long time. Now we're going to put a brand new path. And so the only question that I had, screw the topics of relocating trees and plants and all that. Yeah. My whole thing is, if you can't maintain a sidewalk, how are you going to be able to maintain a path?
So there's I don't know. So this is not from a statement of knowledge, but just having been in the city for almost 2 years now, there's times where I'll ask that kind of question where, like, why are we not doing this? This doesn't make any sense. Why would we be doing something or not doing something? Yeah. And I can tell you that sidewalk, just looking at it just off the top of my head, it is not ADA compliant. And so I imagine that if we did go in and tried to repair it to any significant amount,
it would cost too much money.
We would probably have to bring it into ADA compliance, the entirety of it, and then that would probably wind up bringing more money than we would be able to do. Yeah, so that we would probably just have to rip it up. Yeah. So I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you run into the city website's a perfect example. I was like, hey, I want to have all documents on the city website. Yeah. And, because it's digital, right? Like, I'm an IT guy, cybersecurity guy. Like, I'm like, why do we have paper documents? So this is crazy. Like, we should put everything on the website, make it all transparent for everybody out there, right? Yeah. And they were like, we tried that, and we got sued. Yeah. Because there's
what? Yeah. You got sued?
Yeah, we get sued all the time. Cities get sued all the time. So there's like this family that goes around to Florida pools. They travel around to different hotels and they stay, and then they one of their family members is in a wheelchair, and they'll if the pool doesn't have a mechanism for them to get into the pool, they'll sue the hotel, and they win because
It's supposed to be compliant.
it has to be by Florida law. It has to be compliant, right? And so that's why when you go to a hotel in Florida, every single pool is either zero entry or they've got some kind of lift or some way for somebody who's mobility challenged to get into the pool, right? That's Florida law. And so whether you think that's right, wrong, or indifferent, doesn't matter. There's a family around that's doing that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so just like that, there's people out there who will look up city websites to see if they're ADA compliant. And so when you run into things like that, it's like we have these old PDF documents and we have like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them. And so if you put all of them up on the website, you're going to get sued because those old PDFs are not to a standard of the ADA compliance, right?
That's insane.
Right? So the next thing that listeners probably thinking is, well, why wouldn't you just make them compliant?
Yeah.
Well,
Costs a lot of money.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
A lot of money.
And
then you got to get people that are going to agree on that money that are being spent.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
It's actually what's funny is like, and I've said this about the government. It's not necessarily the amount of money. Sometimes it's just getting people to agree on that money going to where it needs to go.
Yeah. And when we're talking about spending $200,000 on making documents ADA compliant so that we can put them on a website, and knowing full well that probably no one will look at the majority of those documents. Like literally no one will look at them, you know, because we have retention requirements.
Yeah.
It's not, that juice is not worth the squeeze,
Yeah.
right? So if somebody requests the document, they'll get the document.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's Florida law. But there's, you know, to go the extra, 100 miles to try to put them on the city website sounds like a great idea on the front end. This is one of the things going back to the very first thing we were talking about. You know, that was something that on the campaign trail, I was like, why don't we digitize the whole city? Put everything on the website. Well, I found out very quickly that, there's laws out there that actually make access harder.
Yeah. So
it's just crazy, but it's what we got to deal with.
Getting back on topic with Beach Drive. So one of the other things that I wanted to kind of hit on, because it seemed like one of the gentlemen that I had on had talked about how if you looked at the surveys of the area, actually Beach Drive, the amount of property that's owned actually goes up to some people's doorways.
Yeah, the
Like,
right
that is
of
a
way.
real thing.
So Beach Drive, when you start at 6th Street and you go towards, I think it's Balboa. It's all 50 feet right of way.
Yeah.
And then I think after Balboa all the way down to Frankfurt, it's 75 feet. 75 feet. And yeah, you're right. There are some of the right of way literally goes up within feet.
If you really wanted to
of somebody's door.
Yep. You could
do
it.
We've tried to talk with some of these homeowners and say, hey, we're willing to work with you here. Like we'll literally provide you with a document saying that the city will never encroach on this, and they tell us to go pound sand, which is their right.
Yeah.
It's their right to do. There's their right to tell us to go pound sand. So we say, okay, off we go, But I think a lot of people bought property, and I think a lot of people in the city, just wherever you're at, if you bought property, you believe you own it up to the road. And in a lot of places, that's not necessarily true. Because there is the right of way.
I think one of the main things that's just been like harped on, that's been freaking just murdered to death, and it's through certain platforms. And we'll talk about the vegetation and trees. A lot of people are sitting there saying, "Oh, they're not going to relocate those trees. They're not really going to do that, and then they're not going to put in, So
we're not relocating the trees.
Well, there was on the on the actual this.
We're not. Let me rephrase that. We're not relocating palm trees because it's actually more costly. To dig up a palm tree.
There was a lot of those models that showed, and they had them like this is going to be relocated, and it was like, where are they being relocated?
When you dig up a palm tree, and you deal with the folks, the landscapers that deal with palm trees. If you buy a palm tree from them, they'll warranty the palm tree. So if it dies within so many years, they'll literally replace it.
Yeah, they're all over the place here in Florida.
If you dig one up, use the same company. If you dig one up and plant it, it costs more, and they won't warranty it. So if you want a palm tree to be there, you know, it makes more sense to buy a palm tree outright instead of trying to go through the effort of replanting that one, putting it through all the stress. Now, what that looks like maybe is, hey, if somebody wants these palm trees, we may just give them away. I don't know. But the point is, we don't necessarily have to put them in a wood chipper.
So the trees that are on those models where it says relocation.
That's different. So palm trees, I know we are not relocating because there's just, it just doesn't make sense to do it. But for the other trees, if they're like an oak or if they're a native tree, they're a native tree to the state of Florida, then we're going to make efforts to relocate them or plant more. But so I pushed for, hey, if this is a project that's got to move forward, right? Like if this is something that has to move forward, then I want to have more trees, more native trees to the state of Florida. Than we have, because they lost a lot of trees, right? Hurricane Michael took a lot of trees. A lot of people don't realize this, and you know, I'm a conservative, but I love Florida nature, and I think that conservatives and liberals just disagree on how it should be, you know, handled. But the Florida longleaf pine was decimated. I mean, decimated. Longleaf pine is native to this region, native to the state of Florida. And yellow pine has kind of just taken over because it's resistant to a certain parasite. And the longleaf pine, which are taller and more storm resistant than the yellow pine.
Weren't we using that for paper, though?
Yellow pine, especially for wood.
I mean, they were going to be...
White pine also, right? So... But we're looking at planting back longleaf pine, and that's to me that's like most people will drive by that and never even know, right? Yeah. But that whole road used to be longleaf pine, and that's a much better. It's a hardier pine. It's a much better pine, but there's a certain parasite that it is that wiped it out. You know, kind of like the American chestnut. Not to the same degree as the American chestnut, but very similar.
I think some people don't understand that too. This is a little off topic, but on topic. How powerful Hurricane Michael was.
Oh, it was insanely powerful. It was ridiculous.
You could have a pine needle that was sticking out of the side of a pine tree.
Yeah.
That's how high the winds were. The velocity was so high. Yeah. They could send a pine needle.
Hurricane Michael
to the
was
side of a tree.
Literally a giant tornado. Yeah. In all of the mapping that they did after the fact, they did not find a single tornado inside of the hurricane, which is incredibly rare. Yeah. Most hurricanes spawn off multiple tornadoes inside of the hurricane itself, and Hurricane Michael did not. It was the giant tornado. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that especially if they've moved here recently or you know, post Hurricane Michael. I'm very, very thankful that it did not come 3 miles to the west. Then it would have been more like a Hurricane Katrina type situation where thousands of people died instead of you know, just the. I think we were in single digits for Michael. It would have been much more. It was a devastating storm, but it would have been even more worse. That's not even the right phrasing of that, but it would have been the storm of the century, I think. With impact to loss of life, impact to loss of property, if it had just been 3 miles to the west. Yeah. I mean, it probably would have been a lot worse. Just a little bit on the map.
It's so crazy how it happened, too, because I was in a place where nobody could contact me during Hurricane Michael, but after, like, I'd come back for the holidays, my command had let me come back to, you know, visit family and everything. Mm-hmm. And when I came back, I mean, it was like, dude, I didn't even recognize this place. Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah. And I grew up here my whole life. And I'm like, you know, so I think that about wraps it up on Beach Drive. So the next thing, I'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, sure.
Marina.
Marina.
Let's talk about the Marina.
Which one?
Panama City Marina. Yeah. Right. I know St. Andrews and Panama City Marina. There's been a lot of controversy that's been talked about that. I think a lot of it has to do with St. Joe and the agreement that's gone on there.
Yeah. So the previous commission approved an agreement with St. Joe that allowed them to use a portion of the marina for 60 years.
Yeah.
Now, what the city gets out of that is all the bed tax from the hotel, merchant fee for the meals that are being served at the restaurant, Harrison's, and the restaurant in the hotel, as well as they're sharing in profits with us. And those numbers are steadily going up. I want to say it was just this past year that they actually started making the first payments on it. When you look at development, things like this across the state, different types of things like this, there's always a hockey stick graph.
Yeah.
Where like for the first 5 years they don't make any money, and then after that it just goes up. And so when you're doing a profit share, if they're not making any money, you're not making any money, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that in the future you're gonna make money.
Yeah.
And so they've started to pay, their end of the deal, and that money's starting to come in. And there's people that are upset over that, and I'm not saying that they're wrong or that anybody's right or wrong about any of this. It's what happened.
Yeah.
So that's what we got to deal with. So as we move forward, what do we want to see on the marina, I think, is the biggest question. And we can even talk about the money, man. There's a lot of people who think that we could rebuild the marina, with the money that FEMA had. There's a lot of people that think, oh yeah, you could rebuild the whole marina for all that money, and that's not.
Oh, we talked a little
accurate.
bit about the slips was kind of like a big ordeal that I had talked about.
With who?
Alan Branch.
Okay.
I think he was the one that don't quote me. I think he was the one that I had on, and he talked about how people that lived in Alabama could own a slip in Panama City.
Yeah.
And so it was like they're getting this
sweetheart of a deal. Yep, it was a
sweet deal.
I mean, I guess.
Or even people that even lived over on the beach and people that lived in Lynn Haven, they're getting this, pretty decent deal.
Mm-hmm.
But yet the people of Panama City
Only
are pretty much funding it.
40 slips.
Yeah, it was something like that.
There's 40 slips. 40 slips. I may be off by one or two there, but it was about 40 slips that were owned or leased rather by Panama City residents. Every other slip was somebody that didn't live in the city of Panama City.
It was like people that don't even live here.
And
they
so
had a slip.
the money that we had that was set aside by FEMA would only build back the wet slips, not the marina, the wet slips only.
Yeah.
And we had to build it back exactly as it was built in the 60s. Right? So
I'm kind of like...
The boat sizes have changed drastically since the 60s. Boaters' needs have drastically changed since the 60s. There's been a lot of major improvements in engines and whatnot, and so they were able to have bigger boats.
Yeah.
There's a whole gamut of reasons there as to why marina design has changed since the 60s.
Yeah.
Both of the still living marina superintendents agreed that the marina design definitely needed to be changed. That they had encountered issues in their time overseeing the marina that just common sense needs to be changed. Now, so we had about 19 million that we could have used to rebuild the wet slips and the wet slips only. Now, when I say that, what that doesn't mean is that we could use the money elsewhere and still do this.
Yeah.
So if it only costs us, 17 million, then we left 2 million on the table, and then we don't. But that wasn't the direction that we were. The folks who build marinas were telling us that it was going to wind up being, because you have to build it the same way as 1960. And marina building is different now.
Yeah.
So. But because of the care that is needed in order to build it back exactly the same way that it was, because if we use the wrong bolts, we use the wrong screws, we use the wrong tie-ins, we use the wrong whatever, FEMA can come back and say, you screwed up, we want all the money back.
Yeah.
And if we're $30 million into that project, which is possible because that's called a standard project, then FEMA could say, give us all $30 million back.
Yeah.
Well, there have been a couple of things that had happened. The county had a FEMA clawback, and they have 2 FEMA representatives sitting in their office. So they have the benefit of literally going to FEMA and saying, is this okay? And FEMA looking at them in person and going, yes.
Or no.
And then FEMA clawed money back.
Yeah.
$30 million. Washington County, they had $70 million clawback. And Washington County sat down with FEMA and said, you know we're going to win in court, right? And they said, yes, we know. So that tells us the process is the punishment. And here recently we've seen in North Carolina where FEMA went into certain areas and basically said, if they've got a Trump flag, we're moving on by.
Yeah.
So
we saw that in Southwest Florida, or not. Sorry,
it wasn't
South Florida,
overt.
Central Florida.
Right. So we're seeing, so what I'm thinking is, you know, what we're seeing was that FEMA just wasn't friendly to all of Northwest Florida at all, right? Yeah. And then when we see North Carolina comes out, and it's kind of like the mask comes off, and they're just basically anti-Trump, anti-conservative. So I think that that's kind of vindicating of, hey, we needed to move this money off of a standard project and onto what's called a capped project. Yeah. Under a capped project, FEMA, they still technically can call the money back, but it is incredibly harder for them to do so.
Yeah.
So when we move the money off of the Marina project onto the Martin project, that effectively safeguarded that money on a project that, you know, doesn't make money. So with a marina, it's an asset.
Yeah.
So now we can work with a partner on that asset, let a partner build it to the specs that we say as a community. We still retain the right to go down there. People can still go down there, enjoy sunsets. They can go down there and fish.
Yeah.
They can still have public access to their marina. It's just somebody else is going to build it, and they're going to be able to operate it to recoup the cost of building it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, the fact that you brought up the Martin project kind of brings up the Civic Center issue a little bit. So, well, okay.
Martin. You want to go to Martin or Civic Center? Which one do you want to go?
Let's go to the Civic Center first,
Sure.
and then we'll head over to the Martin Theater. So the Civic Center has been said, okay, so FEMA came in, deemed it.
FEMA didn't step foot in the building.
So, okay.
FEMA didn't step foot in the building. It was damaged. Roof was messed up. It had water damage on the inside of it.
But, well, okay. So some of the argument that is being brought up now, it just based on what I've heard, is that the Civic Center went through like wind mitigation testing on the inside to go through like the strength of Hurricane Michael. Also to go through the water damage that was done through Hurricane Michael, which actually caused more damage than what Hurricane Michael had originally done to the Civic Center. So to say that it needed to be...
No, so let me tell you what I'm going to tell you. And the reason, because a lot of times that gets convoluted.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go through a chronological kind of timeline,
Okay.
right? So Hurricane Michael hits.
Yeah.
It was damaged.
Okay.
So the argument is, how much? How much is it damaged, right?
Yeah.
So the rule is that if it's damaged more than 51%, that 51 or more, then FEMA will pay for it to be knocked down and redone.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So all the experts we had that had looked at the building said, well, yeah, it's more than 51%. The whole ceiling got racked.
Okay.
Right? So there was water damage on the inside of it. The electrical components got damaged. I mean, there was there should have been and this is where with the data and the information that I have, and I look back, I get the Monday morning quarterback, the previous commission, right? Like that's so that is probably looking at all the information that they had in front of them. That is a decision that I would have voted for, to say, yeah, we need to take FEMA to court, because they didn't step foot in the building. They didn't even go in it. How can you tell me that a building is not 51% damaged if you don't even step foot in the building, right?
Okay.
That's crazy. I think anybody out there that had an insurance claim that their insurer Now, I know FEMA is not our insurance, but most people dealt with insurance. I'm using an analogy that most people can identify with. If your insurance claim, if your adjuster didn't even step foot in your house and said, yeah, we're going to give you $1,000 for your damages, you'd probably balk at that, right? And you'd probably try to take them to court because you're like, they didn't even step foot in the house. So that's very similarly what happened with FEMA. They didn't even step foot in the building. And yet they said, no, it's not damaged. And so we took them to court. And as part of that process of taking them to court, we had to kind of prove that this is what happens on the inside of the building when these hurricane forces come into play. And I've posted all this stuff out on the Facebook group that I created for the Civic Center. So that evidence was presented to 3 judges. Whatever the 3 judges agree on, that's what happens. And 2 of them dissented with us, and one of them wrote a scathing rebuke of the other 2. Scathing rebuke. And is what it is. There's not a whole lot else we can do with that. We lost. So FEMA had said,
the argument is the argument that is being presented, or at least the way that it was recently, was like the Civic Center didn't have as bad a damage as they said. Most of the damage that came from it was simulating all of that.
That argument doesn't hold water.
Okay.
And the reason it doesn't hold water is because the insurance company requires mitigation. The insurance company flat out requires mitigation. So the insurance company spent $4 million out of the insurance proceeds, which the city, and I don't know why they did this. I wasn't there. I didn't vote for this. But the city settled with the insurance company. Now, the city had multiple buildings under insurance policy, multiples. And so kind of the carve out, if you will, there wasn't a specific amount that was for this building or that building. It was just like, if you just give us this much money, we'll just sign the document and we can just part ways, right? So the carve out for that was about $11 million for the Civic Center. They used 4 of it. The insurance company forcibly, you didn't even give us the $4 million. Like, they just kept it and paid a company out of their pocket to mitigate the Marina Civic Center. So everything got ripped out by the insurance company.
Kendall,
so to say that we did more damage to the building as part of that process, I mean,
Kendall, did you ever bring up that article? The Civic Center. What we're talking about, like, we had looked it up before on the damage and all that crap. So I just want to make sure that I got that right.
So the insurance company mitigated it. We didn't have a choice in the matter, right? So they come in, they rip out all the soft stuff. They put a new roof on it, a TPO roof. They required that to happen.
So they required you to prove to them that it was like the damage that can be done. They require that.
They went in and handled every bit of that.
So the insurance company did that.
They
the
paid a
city
company.
Didn't have anything to do with that.
The insurance company paid a company to go into the Marina Civic Center, assess damage.
Who the hell gave them permission to do that?
That's part of the insurance agreement.
Well, I mean, I get that, but you're saying, so again, this is the whole, and I'm not trying to get, I don't know hardly anything about this. I'm just, the way the article was written, and he's going to bring it up here, was that it was kind of like the city knew, and the city was helping them destroy the inside. The way that it's worded, and I'll read it. It's worded in a way where it's like the city destroyed the Marina Civic Center trying to prove the damage that Hurricane Michael and the effects that it had. And so
you can look at the
you have people throughout the community that are sitting there and going, well, the Marina Civic Center wasn't that bad of damaged. It was because they went in there and tried to do this experiment to be able to prove the damage that was done. And most of the damage that was done to the Marina Civic Center was by that. And by that alone, that made it, undeemable to like rebuild or whatever.
So I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at the footage.
Yeah.
Of the hurricane force winds that they put on the building, so to speak. I know
It was like 102 mile an hour.
but what they were
winds
looking to
did on the
do,
inside.
really, what they were looking to do was they were looking to, because when people say this, I guess some people envision a bunch of fans, you know, that we stacked up next to the building, you know, and tried to blow the building down. Like that's not what happened. It was literally the back side of the marina where the two doors are for the mechanical rooms. That's what they did. They basically,
it wasn't the entire Civic Center.
No, you can't. I mean, how do you do the entire Civic Center?
Man, dude, I have no idea.
You know what I mean?
I'm saying,
I think, so the point is you can't do that for the entire building. It's a massive building, right? Like so when you look at the footage of what we actually tested, and we say I wasn't even in the city when this happened, but you know, it's another problem that I inherited, right? They tested the back rooms that held the electrical equipment. So they put sensors and different like wind, like little pieces of tape that shows if the wind's moving or not inside the room. And then they pointed a bunch of fans at those doors and just blew air at them really, really hard, and then introduced water to the fans, right? That's what they did. And so then on the inside, there's cameras set up to see what happens.
The way that it's worded in the article is like, you guys flooded the entire Civic Center for like 12. No, as soon as we bring it up, it's like 12 hours or something.
So I have the report, and I'd be happy to share it with you.
Yeah,
The
no,
report.
I didn't know.
I don't think that that's true.
Yeah.
So this is from mypanhandle.com. Basically, when you go down to what you're explaining gets, it's off where it's on Thursday the test will take place on the side of the Civic Center facing the bay in order to simulate the winds that happened during Hurricane Michael. How it works: 2 wind generators will face the building, blow winds and water up to 150 miles per hour is expected to last anywhere from 6 to 8 hours.
Those wind generators weren't taller than I am.
6 to 8 hours of blowing wind and water into an area, and
Well,
you're
into
saying,
a specific area.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
The southernmost corner
yeah,
of the building, the southeast corner of the building was where all the electrical was. I mean, literally all the electrical, and that was the lowest point in the building. So it was kind of goofy that you know, the flood map changed, and that whole room was literally in now a flood zone. So if we were to move forward with refurbishing the marina or Civic Center, then we would have to have figured out that room, right?
Yeah.
To some degree, we'd have to figure out that room. So that was always a challenge moving forward. Not an insurmountable challenge, but a challenge. So moving forward, you know, they did the tests on the back rooms, so to speak, of the Civic Center, and they determined that, I mean, wind got in there, rain got in there. You know, this wasn't.
yeah.
You know, so they presented all that evidence to the judges, and you know, that's where we're at, right?
Yeah.
So moving forward, I wanted to save it.
Yeah.
I wanted to save the Civic Center because I think the average person could look at it and go, well, yeah, I mean, it's got thick walls, it's a steel structure, you know, we could fix it, and we absolutely could have fixed the Civic Center. It's just the question is, how much money would it take to fix Civic Center? We did have several different charrettes and groups, you know, to try to figure this out. I invited some folks that were from out of town that had nothing to do with Panama City. We wanted their opinion. They weren't going to have anything to do with Panama City after they left. I invited a local builder that has a GC that's done projects like this to come in and sit on it. I didn't know him from Adam. Never had even met him. He's just interested in Panama City, interested, you know, in being a part of it. I wanted to save this, you know, but I also wanted to be smart with our money, right? So, and I tried every which way to get this to where we could save it. And what convinced me otherwise, after multiple engineers, architects, structural engineers, programmers, people who literally run event centers like this across the country, was basically telling me, you know, yeah, you can save it, but it's probably not going to be worth saving. from a financial standpoint was two guys who raise money for a living. I mean, these guys talk to millionaires and billionaires, and they get, you know, fat checks signed off for these types of projects. You know, they don't know each other. As far as I know, they don't know each other. I talked to them two separate times, individually, and they said, you'll never get a dime from any large donor for something like that, because when donors donate $30 million to a project, you know, $20 million to a project, $1 million to a project, they want to know that the project is going to succeed and move forward, and that their money's not just going to be stagnant and going to a money pit.
Yeah.
Right? The only exception to that is any historically significant building. So like the Ford Theater where Abraham Lincoln was shot, like that's different. That's a different level, right? Something has to be tied to it like that, then you might be able to get somebody that would donate to it. And this building doesn't have anything like that, right? There's a lot of sentimental value there. There's a lot, like I performed on that stage.
Yeah.
My son performed on that stage. I talked to a lady, 7 generations of her family had performed on that stage.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of sentimentalness tied into that building. But from a strictly financial standpoint, we were never going to be able to raise the money to rebuild it, to refurbish it. And the longer it takes us, the more money it takes. Because as you've probably seen, things don't get cheaper; things get more expensive, right? So, so that's when I realized that we weren't going to be able to save the building, and in order to give the community a performing arts center, which is what it wants, right? The meeting with the arts folks, they didn't necessarily love the building. I mean, it wasn't a particularly beautiful building, but they were concerned that if we knocked it down, that we would never have another performing arts center again. And there's some people out there that believe that, but I'm in talks with several people who are very, very interested and who could make it happen, a performing arts center here in Panama City. So, I mean, what that looks like, I don't know yet, but we definitely have the people who can fund it. We definitely have people who want it. It's just, can we get all the right players and the right money in place at the right time? And I think we can. So I'm working on it. It's not going to be next year, but I'm working on it, you know.
So the Martin project.
Yeah, the Martin
Theater. Yeah, that's going to be...
Man, it's going to be amazing. But
Yeah.
a lot of people think that it's $32 million for one building. You know, so then they calculate up the number of seats in the Martin, and they go, man, that's a lot of money for per seat. That's never going to make money. Yeah. And if you do that calculation,
well, anything that's a civic center or anything never really makes money anyway.
But
it's not a revenue.
There's
generator.
a flaw, and I'm not straw manning here. These are literally arguments that I've seen.
Oh yeah,
you know. But the problem is that this is 3 separate buildings. 3 separate buildings, and when you divide that up and you realize, okay, well, you know, then it's not nearly as expensive as you really think it is. When you realize how much going into an old building and building out, how much that costs. And if we knocked all the buildings down and just rebuild them again, we could probably do more for less. But new construction is almost always cheaper than retrofitting. Yeah, which was another reason why we moved forward with demo on the Civic Center. We could build a new performing arts center for about $30 million. And we had a fellow come to us and say that we could fix a Civic Center for $30 million. And there was an individual here who does bonds. You know, in order to do those large things, construction companies have to take out a bond. Yeah. And I know you're probably familiar with this, but your viewers your viewers and listeners may not be, right? Yeah. You have to take out a bond, and you have to bond up to a certain amount of money. And if you can't perform, we get the money. You know, it's an insurance policy, basically. And so when we started asking, well, would you be willing to bond that?
Let's talk about that. Actually, I'll skip over the talking about the Martin because I think that's pretty much the gist of it. But sure. How the bidding of contractors work at the city level. Yeah. kind of run us through that. How does that work?
Okay, so the city. I have a criticism here for the city, and I'm just gonna pause that for a second. But I think we are very, very transparent.
Yeah.
We put out a bid. We in the Martin in particular case, we put it out for 30 days. We got one bid. And we had talked to multiple local contractors and said, "Hey, are y'all gonna put in for this?" And
But you guys do
some
not
of them
just
had said,
local.
"What's that?"
You guys reach
We
out
don't have local
broad.
preference.
Yeah.
We don't have local preference.
Yeah.
But if you were a contractor and you had built something similar, I probably would just call you up and say, "Hey, man, like, are you know, this is open for bid. Are you looking at it?
Yeah.
Because I'm hoping that you are, right? Because we like competition, right?
Yeah.
So, not to say that you would be guaranteed any favoritism by any means.
Yeah.
Don't take that the wrong way.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like you're trying to garner support for competition.
Yeah.
And we got one bid, so we put it out again. We got one bid. Same folks.
Company. Yeah.
Same company. So at that point, it was kind of like, well, we can't force anybody to put a bid in on it. And we got a company that wants to work with us. And if we continue to put it out to bid, we're eventually going to tell that, I mean, there's a message that's being sent to that company, you know, like, we don't want you as the message. And that's not what the message we wanted to send. So we ultimately just went forward with it because we needed to move.
What's the company?
Burke. Burke is the company that won the award for that.
Yeah.
And they had won the award for the MLK Rec Center as well.
Okay.
But you know, at some point you got to move.
Yeah.
And that was something I think that the citizens of the city were just resoundingly saying is move us forward away from Hurricane Michael. Fix the city.
Yeah.
Fix the roads and fix the city, right?
Well, I know that the city has had some heat with a couple of utilities companies. I try to tie that back in with local companies, how everybody's in the same group. The same with engineering companies, especially like when it comes to like Chris Forehand and all them. That's one of the things that they kind of like hit on.
Our bidding process for contracts, we put everything out on bonfire. So if you're a small business owner and you're listening to this or you're watching this and you're like, man, how do I work with the city? There's a thing that I'm pushing for, which is, basically, and they started that we've had one. Mm-hmm. I put it out on my Facebook page. We've had one where if you're a small business or you want to work with the city as a contractor, how do you do that? So we have a little training session that explains to you the entire process and what do you need to do, what product level do you need to be at to be bonded, you know what I mean, and be there to answer any questions to those individuals that show up and want to do that, so that we can have more competition on things, right? Mm-hmm. I'm very much a free market kind of guy. Like I think that the more people we have bidding on things, the better. Mm-hmm. But so far as the bidding, we put everything on bonfire. And that's my criticism, is I think we need to put it out on other platforms that you don't have to pay to have access to. The bonfire is a paid service.
Okay.
So if you had a business and you wanted to do business, you'd have to pay bonfire to use it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much it is. I don't think it's a crazy amount of money, but you still have to pay to get into it, right? And so we also put out what we're putting on bonfire. We put that out through our website. And so if you're listening and watching into this and you want to know, well, how do I get notified for that? You can go to the city website. And there's a link on there to get notified for things. And you can get notified for everything from water boil notices to, hey, the city's putting out a streets division contract. You know what I mean? Like there's everything we do is in the public. So we put it all out there. So far as engineering goes, whenever we have engineering contracts, that's a little different because we have like a round robin. So any engineer that wants to do business with the city that has a firm or is a certified engineer, I think you have to be a PE for certain things. Yeah, that gets into the nitty gritty. But they know, the engineers know, they're trained in this, right? So if they want to do business with the city, they can come to the city and say, I want to do business with the city, provide their credentials, and then they get put on the round robin list. That's how it works. Now, if there's more things, like if there's a ongoing project with multiple phases, then usually it stays with the same engineer because why would you switch?
Yeah.
Why would you change that in the middle. Why would you don't switch horses midstream kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But that's how it works.
Yeah, as far as
And sometimes we'll ask engineering or architecture firms to just provide us with very, very small things. And if they don't want to, they obviously don't have to, but like renderings, like if we're like, hey, we're looking at a little rendering on a park, can you provide us a rendering on that? And we'll blast that out.
Yeah.
And, if somebody replies on that, then we'll get that too. But there's usually not a lot or any money exchanged on that kind of stuff. But again, they're not beholden to do it either. So,
yeah. Well, I kind of want to hit on another topic. So SweetBay.
Yeah.
I kind of heard something through a grapevine on this where it was like contractors weren't making the amount of money that they were supposed to be making off the building of the homes. Now, this is in your ward, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was something that came up. And again, this is like one of those things that's heard from the outside.
Yep.
and
It's super complicated, right?
Oh, is it?
It is incredibly complicated.
Okay, well, explain it.
So I'll do my best.
Do your best to dumb it down and put it in layman's terms.
All right, so it's so when I was walking the streets, which sounds really bad. When I was campaigning, the number one thing that I heard from residents was fix our streets. Yeah. Fix our streets. Well, when I got into the city, I got into the seat, I found out that it's not the actual asphalt that's the problem. That's just the symptom.
Yeah.
Right. It's the infrastructure underneath it. That's the problem. And that's incredibly expensive. That's $1 million a mile to fix. That's a lot of money. So I started looking for creative solutions to find money for infrastructure because the prior commission had bonded all of the infrastructure surtax that was voted in about 8 years ago by the citizens. And they bonded it immediately and spent all the money. So all the money that people have been paying for infrastructure surtax to the city of Panama City, or the portion of that we get from the county, has been going to pay that bond back. A little bit of it has not. I mean, as we've gotten closer to the end, the bond payments have gotten lower. So we have a little bit of money. But when I just told you it's $1 million a mile, it ain't that kind of money, right? So we're able to do little stuff with it. So thank you to the voters that voted in the new infrastructure surtax. That's going to give us that same pot of money to fix infrastructure with and to fix the roads and whatnot in the city. But it's not enough. It's just not enough, right?
Oh, wow.
So I'm creatively trying to seek out ways, and I still am, to come up with money or to lower the price of the $1 million a mile, right? Raise the bridge or lower the water, right? Or do both. Yeah. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to do both, raise the bridge and lower the water. And so the SweetBay deal is born out of that. And so the developers of SweetBay is HomeFed. They have been developing SweetBay since about 2012.
Yeah.
And this is a unique project in the state of Florida. Now, there are developments elsewhere in the state of Florida that are much larger, but the amount of infrastructure that is going into SweetBay is greater. Now, when I say infrastructure, a lot of times you might think water, sewer, that kind of stuff, right? Well, that's included. But we're talking about sidewalks, trees, landscaping, all of that. Have you been through SweetBay?
Oh, yeah.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And every road you turn on in SweetBay is just gorgeous and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
That's costly. That's incredibly costly. Well,
there's a reason why 30A costs as much as it is. It's the same type of setup.
Exactly. So they are not immune to the same market forces that you and I have to deal with. Mm-hmm. So eggs went up. I mean, this drink here costs more. TV costs more. Everything costs more because of COVID and all the craziness that happened with that, and all the shutdown of all the different logistics that happened there, supply chain, all that stuff, right? And so their cost to put in the infrastructure more than doubled. So infrastructure, piping, that kind of stuff, a lot of that stuff is made overseas and then brought in bulk here. Some of it's not. Some of it is. It doesn't matter. Even if even the stuff that's built here suffered from supply chain issues, right? So their ability to make a profit died. I mean, it died, and it died very quickly. So if you're a business and the thing that you do no longer makes a profit, what do you do?
Normally go out of business.
You go out of business, right?
Yeah,
You stop doing the thing, right? Whatever the thing is. Well, in real estate, you can just mothball it. You can just, well, hey, everybody's fired, and we're just going to sit on this for, until maybe the market returns.
Yeah.
It may be, if it does or if it doesn't.
Yeah.
We don't know, right?
Yeah.
And so this agreement allows for what's called CDDs, which are community development districts that were approved by the prior commission to be created inside of SweetBay. Now, when you think CDD, think the most famous CDD is the Disney CDD, right? That's a very, very large district, and that's where Governor DeSantis went in there and he
Reedy Creek,
he tossed his weight around inside that, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Which I'm not. I'm happy.
so basically, it's a mini
I
government.
know you brought it up.
Yeah.
That's a man, dude. That's a topic all in itself.
Oh, I know, right? You can do a whole podcast just on that, right?
Just on that, yeah.
So that's a CDD, right?
Yeah.
And so CDDs they're like mini cities. Yeah. They're like little mini municipalities with all the same rules and everything.
They
right?
have their own local government.
They have their own local government. And so the originally they had wanted to do one giant CDD for SweetBay. And the legislature, because of Reedy Creek, didn't have any appetite for it whatsoever. Right?
Absolutely not.
And so we can do, municipalities can do smaller CDDs. By the law, we're allowed to do smaller CDDs, and so we did. And so they have 9. They have 9 CDDs that are residential. Yeah. And basically what they did is they just broke it up. Think about just like little like sections of the neighborhood, little like phases, right? That's a CDD. And so what they're going to do is that the CDD is going to borrow money to put in infrastructure into the CDD. Right? Now, CDDs can borrow money.
Yeah.
But who has to pay it back?
Taxpayer.
Nope. The owners of the CDD. The taxpayers don't pay it back. The owners of the CDD pay it back.
Okay.
So if the developer borrows the money and gets stuck with the CDD, they're paying all the money back, right? If the developer sells the lots, which that's how the developer makes money. The developer puts in all the infrastructure and then sells the lots. Yeah. That's how this particular situation works. Now, other developments work differently, but this is how this one works. They sell lots in bulk. They basically wholesale the lots out, right? They don't sell onesie twosie. They sell blocks or entire phases. Yeah,
phases.
So then if the builder doesn't builder gets stuck with the payment. So who ultimately has to pay this, right? And so that's where they came to us and they said, well, hey, because these homes that we're putting in are valued by the county so much more than the average home in the city, there's more tax revenue there, right? This makes sense. If your tax rate is, say, 4 mils and your neighbor's is 4 mils and your house is worth $1 million and your neighbor's worth $500,000, you're getting taxed at the same rate, but you're paying more money. Are you using more fire and police? No. But this is the mechanism that the state has given us to use. I don't agree with it, but this is the mechanism the state has given us to use. So because homes are selling in SweetBay anywhere from $560,000 to 1.2 million, they're paying more in taxes than the average citizen. They are. So what the city now does is the city is going to do a true up of, hey, this is how much fire costs, this is how much police costs, this is how much the things cost for us to provide use this individual house service. And then that's the number that we have to get in ad valorem taxes off that house in SweetBay that the developer put inside of a CDD, that the builder bought the lot and built a house and somebody bought, right?
Yeah.
Tracking? All right. So everything above that line, we're going to share with the CDD. so that they can pay off the loan.
Okay.
So the person who bought the home doesn't see any difference in their taxes. They're not taxed extra for this infrastructure to go in, right? They're not doing that, right? Does that make sense? Like it gets lumped into the rest of the city. They're and we're sharing that with the CDD so that the loan gets paid off.
Yeah.
The other portion of the sharing comes back to the city in the form of a transportation impact fee.
Yeah.
Because the more houses that go in, the more people are going to be transversing the neighborhood, the more that's going to impact all of the infrastructure under the road and on top of the road, right? And so we're able to use that money, which is estimated conservatively to be about $45 million in Forest Park, Candlewick, Venetian Villa, Kings Point. So I'm able to take money out of houses that wouldn't exist otherwise, right? Because we're back to the, hey, do you do the thing that doesn't make money? No, you mothball it or you sell it, right? So these homes are going to get built now, and they're going to be high-value homes, which is going to be more for ad valorem, and we're going to be able to take that money and use it on roads and infrastructure for folks outside of SweetBay. And I think that's something that people get confused because they're like, well, why are you giving the rich people more money? Because they think people, all the rich folks live in SweetBay. So they're like, why are you giving rich people more money for their roads? My road's jacked up. And I'm like, yeah, that's the road I'm trying to fix. Does that make sense?
So you're trying to utilize the money that you're bringing in off of SweetBay.
Trying to utilize the tax revenue off of houses that otherwise wouldn't be built, that otherwise just wouldn't exist, off of very expensive homes that otherwise wouldn't exist. To benefit those outside of SweetBay.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense? And because it
does make sense.
So another question I get is, well, why wouldn't you use it over in the Cove, or why wouldn't you use it in St. Andrews? We have messed up roads too, and it's because it's a transportation impact fee. And when you have a transportation impact fee, we're bound by law that it has to be used in a specific area that's impacted by the transportation impact. So that makes sense. So when you get into transportation impact fee.
I get it. A lot of things with government, a lot of people will sit there and they'll be like, that doesn't make any sense. And like, that's just how that's written.
So now we're going to have another pot of money to include the infrastructure surtax that got voted in by the citizens. We're now going to have another pot of money. It's not going to be a crazy big pot of money.
When you originally started talking about it, I was like, trying to make a little bit of a better tax on SweetBay. And my whole thing is like,
nobody's going to pay more taxes than they would otherwise. Nobody.
As long as they're not getting like a break.
Nobody's getting a break.
My whole thing is like, no, dude, if you wanted to live in SweetBay and you wanted to buy a $685,000 house, sorry, that's the taxes that you're linked into. So I don't feel sorry for you.
Yeah. Now the CDD could, the alternative to this, the CDD could say, and remember the CDD has to operate within its boundary. And so if we're talking about just 100 homes, then we're talking about if it costs $5 million to put infrastructure in, then the CDD could tax its own 100 people to pay for that $5 million over the course of time, which would you buy a home in there? If
you're responsible in that area to build that and it doesn't come out of other people who live in other areas.
So the problem you run into there is, and all the real estate agents that are listening to this right now, they know exactly what I'm going to say, which is, would you buy a condo that has a $50,000 assessment on it, that has got a $50,000 assessment on it, that you're going to have to pay as soon as you buy it?
Would I buy it?
Would you buy it?
Heck no.
You'd be like, no, reduce the price by $50,000 is what you'd say, right? No matter what the price is. When you move that many people, and that many people move, we're still at 1,000 people net per day coming into the state of Florida.
Which is ridiculous because we talk about it all the time about how many apartment complexes are just being built left and right here.
So you get all stacks of people, right? When you look at the economic stack, when you look at the poor people, the middle class people, the upper class, that have like millions of dollars, whatever, like, must be nice, right? Those folks that they're all moving to the state of Florida, and so you have to have it. You have to have affordable housing. Like, these people have to have somewhere to live, right?
Hold on. Well, that's the
how
part
we
where,
do that is
so that's the part where I start to differ from people, because my whole thing is like, oh, you're trying to make it easy for somebody to come here.
Not necessarily.
So one of the arguments that I had, and one of the arguments that I've always had, especially about this area, is the fact that right now I don't know what the average home sells for in Bay County, but like, it's
like
I don't know,
300,000.
Kendall, if you can look it up.
About 300,000.
Just the average sell price of a home in Bay County, right?
Yeah.
So we'll do some stupid. I like to do Ron's stupid math. I used to do this like back when I was running for county. But it's kind of ridiculous because if you look at that towards the median income, I don't like to look at the average income.
Yeah,
I look at
income,
the median.
$47,000 a year.
Yeah. The median income,
They can't afford it.
$47,000. So two people working.
Can't afford it.
Sale price is $370.
Yeah. 370. Man,
The
I was off by
median-
70
the
grand plus
median-
median.
The median is $370.
Yeah.
So you got two
off by
people
70
that are
grand.
making less than $100,000 a year.
I've got a 21-year-old son who's married, and he cannot buy a house right now. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like,
But you know what the issue
So-
is the part that you just said a second ago. We have so many people that are moving here from out of state
demand is still
that are
high,
retired that are bringing. No offense, bringing
But
liberal ass ideas that are
that's-
here with their money
that's
that
the
came
freedom
from
to
those.
travel. That's the
I
beauty of
get
the United
it.
States.
I get it, but the thing is like there's
they're
no,
moving from states that have horrible leftist
and
policies.
what jobs do you have here that are going to be able to support that type of sell price of a freaking home?
Yeah, I know.
You don't freaking have it.
I'm-
Everybody back when I was running
So-
my campaign, everybody wanted to sit here
when
and they
you were
wanted to
running your
defend
campaign,
tourism.
that was your strongest point. That was your dude. That was your strongest point, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Was, hey, why are we like tourism's great? Tourism's absolutely amazing. Like we still need tourism. We want tourism. Like tourism pays so many taxes.
Oh
that,
no,
like,
absolutely.
when some of the citizens that are in the city side, like on this side of the bridge, when I say this side of the bridge, I'm talking about where I live and who I serve, not where we're at right this second. Wrap my head around that one real quick. When I talk to people and they're like, we don't want any more tourism, and I'm like, okay, so you want me to
you have to
raise
have
your
that.
taxes? Like, I don't understand this. Like, we
Yeah.
can lower ad valorem taxes if we upped tourism. Like I can provide you even better services if we were just have just a little bit of tourism, not be the beach. I don't want to be the beach,
Yeah.
right? I don't want to be all the condos. I don't want to have all the flashy stuff. You know, that's
Yeah.
great. I'm not knocking it. They need that over here. They do well with it. Keep that over here, and we can get a little bit of that over on the beach side. Just a little bit of people coming over going, oh my gosh, this downtown's amazing. I'm going to buy some things, right?
Yeah.
That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about people moving here, right?
Yeah.
Jobs, you're absolutely right. Jobs. I think, and this is something that I'm going to start pushing on the school board with, is why aren't we pushing for more high-paying jobs in the schools? That was something that I campaigned on. And some of the schools do have very good programs, right? We have a lot of really good medical programs. Medical, we have those, but I'm looking for not all of our kids want to go into medical, right? Like there's like my daughter flat out is like she does not want to like that. She went to the Gulf Coast.
But your career field is in IT. If you go
Exactly.
right now,
Exactly. That's my point.
If you go to Gulf Coast, then you go to Florida State or you go to Haney or whatever,
Yeah.
and you get your IT certs or whatever, entry level job, what does it pay?
If you have a security plus,
If you have Sec Plus, A Plus,
Sec Plus,
Network Plus, whatever,
entry level, I mean, like I have
$47,000 a year.
No. If I have a security plus, you can get a job on base.
Yeah.
As long as you're not a felon, you
You're
can get a job on base.
You're gonna get a help desk
right?
job.
You're gonna get a help desk job with benefits.
Yeah.
Help desk job, you're probably gonna pull in 58.
I don't know, man.
58,000.
I know some guys that are making a lot less than that.
But if you have gone into say cybersecurity, you know what I mean? Like
but even if you said 58, if you said 60 grand, $60,000.
I hired cybersecurity
Do you
folks work from home. I hired cybersecurity folks for $68,000 a year,
68,
entry level.
60. Okay, so
Entry level.
$70,000. Are you going to get approved for $370,000 home?
Probably not. But $68,000 a year for your first job out of college is a game changer for a lot of families in this area. That is a game changer. There is a fiscal cliff when we talk about welfare, when we talk about EBT, when we talk about the government benefits, when we talk about that kind of stuff, right? And whether we agree that they exist or don't agree, they do exist. That's the world we have to live in, right? When we talk about those things, there's a fiscal cliff that it doesn't make sense for that person to get a job. Because as soon as they do, they lose all their benefits. Right now, that's done by design. That is done by design, in my opinion, to keep them on those benefits. So there is a certain dollar amount that if they do improve their life situation or their education to the point to where they can make a certain dollar amount more, that all the benefits go away. Then that it's like, okay, that's not painful for those benefits to go away. Right now. Again, I'm not advocating for those things, but my point is that it is a reality that we have to deal with. And so 100%. The more that we can provide higher paying jobs to the citizens and train them from in our high schools, in our middle schools, and in our elementary schools to be ready to step foot into university or college to go get those higher paying jobs, right? To be trained. I mean, there's an entire.
Well, I can tell you that you and me will agree on that, but I will tell you, I don't like to, I'll bring it up one more time about my campaign. Every time I brought it up, I was attacked on it because it was like I started talking that against the pro quo whatever status of let's push tourism, let's push more things being built. It's like, I don't want my daughter, listen, if my daughter decides she wants to be a mermaid out of the Dixie Stampede new thing that they just built, if that's what she wants to do, fine, so be it. But don't come back asking for money from me when you're not making enough money. My whole thing
I'm talking about options.
I'm talking about options for my kids to have something more than that. We've got, again, two military installations.
2 military bases, And the base of the future. Tyndall, the base of the future.
Oh, no joke. Tyndall is going to be huge.
People do not understand how unprecedented this is. The United States military has not built a new base on U.S. soil. I mean, since like our grandfathers were in World War II.
And that's what I was laughing about.
It's like insane.
Like when I was running my race, I'd sit there and I'd talk about it. I'd be like, dude, we could bring so many jobs here with that.
Most military bases.
Most of the other guys that I was running against, they're going, well, okay, it's going to bring tons of jobs here through the military. I'm like, no, guys. Defense contracting,
it's huge.
And these defense jobs are huge. You guys are looking at this through this small little. This thing is broad. So it's huge.
Most military bases get one construction project a year if they're lucky. If they're lucky, like one. That means you can tear this building down and build a new one. And so when we talk about that, once they get one, they won't get another one for a long time. You know what I mean? So there's a ton of military bases still out there.
Get it.
So the fact that Tyndall is flat out just rebuilding the entire base is leaps and bounds, like unfathomable. Like if you'd have told me, 10 years ago, hey, the entire Tyndall Air Force Base is going to be rebuilt, I'd probably laugh at you because knowing how that system works, it's just.
But I will tell you this right now. I will tell you this right now that there is a certain group of people that are in this area that understand that is a gold mine. But the people that are sitting at our like county level or whatever, they don't see. We've been in the military. We've been to multiple bases. We understand the contracting that goes behind it. We understand the jobs that go behind it that aren't just military personnel. We understand how much money goes in and out of that. These guys who are sitting here at these levels, they don't understand it, and they're not capitalizing on it.
I'm in cybersecurity, and I see some of the salaries and things that are associated with cybersecurity. So I immediately, you stick in the lane, right? Like stay with what you know, right? So play to your strengths and bolster your weaknesses. So, one of my strengths is understanding cybersecurity, understanding the industry, understanding, okay, so how do we provide cybersecurity as an option to our children? You know what I mean? Yeah, there's folks out here that are listening and watching this podcast, and they're going, well, I don't know a thing about cybersecurity, but my kid loves computers. Like my kid absolutely nerds out on this stuff. And I know my kid would really want to do cybersecurity, right? And there's nothing for them available right now in Bay District schools. And so cyber.org, and anybody that's listening to this or watching this can go out to cyber.org and look at this. There is an entire curriculum put out there And when I say curriculum, all the teachers understand what comes with all that. That's the statement of or the standards of behavior that you have to demonstrate in order to pass the whatever. All the different benchmarks and things that come with all of that.
Yeah.
So the teachers now that are listening to this understand that it's not just, hey, do these things. It's a full curriculum package that Bay District schools could implement. Yeah. Pick a school, hire somebody and implement it. You got to pay somebody though to implement it though. That's the thing. And other school districts elsewhere have figured this out. Hey, if you want to have a niche thing that you go after like this to provide another option to your children, you've got to pay the salary that the private sector would pay. Yeah. You can't pay the teacher salary. I mean, you just can't. It's just not possible. You can't pay somebody to teach cybersecurity and pay them an entry-level salary of $47,000 a year. It's not going to happen.
I think computer science is a class that's given now in like high schools, computer science or something like that. So my projection is by the end of 2035, probably you'll start having kids that will have their Sec Plus graduating from high school. Yeah. Because right now I've got several friends of mine right now that are like, oh, if I wanted to get my start in cybersecurity, what's the first? Oh, it's they're like, oh, Sec Plus, and I'm like, yeah, that's your beginner basic getting into.
But it opens all the doors.
And it's so funny because a lot of people look at it as the end all be all. And it's like, no, dude, this
thing.
Stop.
You got to keep going past.
I'm not even in IT, and I will tell you that is not it. That's
but think about this. Think about if other school districts elsewhere have figured out that, hey, if you want to teach programming, if you want to dive full blown into programming and have a programming niche type system that at your high school, then you've got to hire a programmer and you've got to pay, you got to find a really good programmer and pay that programmer.
Well, dual enrollment is still a thing at the college. So a lot of people are able to do that.
Understood. Yeah. But I'm talking about at the high school level, right? So at the high school level, and I understand dual enrollment, but usually dual enrollment is for the upperclassmen, right?
It's your junior, seniors.
But my point is that here's a whole curriculum from K through 12 that is offered. Now, it's heavier weighted in 9 through 12, right? Yeah. Kindergarten is more like, hey, this is a computer.
This is how a mouse works.
That's really, hey, this is a password. Do you know what a password is? That's kind of like the kindergarten, first grade level, and that's just meant to be worked into regular coursework. It's not meant to be its own course. Yeah. Once you hit 9th grade, it is meant to be its own elective, right? It's its own class that you learn cybersecurity as part of this coursework. But the point is that you have to have somebody teach that, right? Yeah. And so where a lot of schools have done is they've grabbed,
it costs a lot of money to do that.
Well, they've just grabbed a coach or they've grabbed somebody that can teach an elective and say, hey, here you go teach it. And in a lot of cybersecurity, it's a lot like investigative work with the police department. You need to have a mentality of how do I break or abuse, or how do I get around this, or how would somebody get around this? That's really, and you can teach that to some degree, but when you have a student who has it natively, you know what I mean? I think there's a lot of students who would use that as an outlet to learn how to hone those skills for good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The ones that are more likely to get in trouble, in a very creative way.
Oh, I remember back at Bay High, we had a couple of the band guys that had hacked the computer system from Best Buy to change the grades of a couple football players so they could play in the big football game.
Yeah.
I don't remember what team they were playing, but it was big enough to where they had to play. Yeah. But some of the band kids, I don't know if they got paid to do it or whatever, but I was in the band at the time. And so it was a couple of drummers. They were nerds when it came to,
Hey,
and they got in there and they hacked the system and they got it. And those guys ended up playing, but it wasn't until afterwards that they found out.
Guess what? If they're still in school, guess what? Hey, we see that you've used some kind of skill set you have here to do something malicious.
Yeah.
We can either expel you, and this can go on your record, or you can take this and get redirected to something positive, right? Yeah. And be a force for good, to the community and the nation at large, right?
And I'll chime in with that, where it's there's actual things beyond that, right? As you talk about, like maybe a debate team or something, like if you're cultivating that at 9 through 12, there's things we could send these kids to as like our representatives that we're kind of trying to grow.
Cybersecurity is rooted in how do you think about something.
Well, it's
really
everything. Well, nowadays it's in everything.
But
you have to be aware of,
you have to understand how something
skill
works.
That has to be, yes.
And you have to understand how something breaks. And a lot of people will send a text on their phone and not put any thought into how this works.
Yes.
Like I press buttons, the screen does things, and my friend or family member gets the message.
Well, the part of cybersecurity also is the cyber awareness stuff.
Yeah.
Like understanding that anything that you send from this damn thing
Don't
right
click
here,
the link. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah,
don't click the link. Don't click the link.
I had Sam, Sam Peebles.
Yeah, I know Sam.
I had
He's a
him
great
on
guy.
I had him on the podcast, and he was talking about how he'll go to Disney, and he'll what is it? iPhone has your you can airdrop.
Yeah.
So he'll airdrop stuff to people. Like when he gets bored, he'll be in line, like on a ride or something.
Yeah, whoever's got it open, right?
And whoever has an airdrop open on their phone, he'll just airdrop them something, and it's a link. And when they click it, it's like a picture of something, and then it says, "Why did you click on this? You don't know who I am."
Yeah.
And it's like I could have stole your entire life.
Yeah.
I can tomorrow I can have all your well, not even tomorrow. Right now I have all your information. I can go buy a Ferrari. Like and your whole life is I could ruin your entire life because you opened
And what's the scarier part of that being in the industry is not the ones that are immediately overt like that. It's the ones that are covert. The ones that'll sit there and just gather data for time, for a long time basically and gain access to all of your information, over time, then sell it to somebody else who's going to do something malicious with it,
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is overall is that, the city has mechanisms and means by which we can do things. We just need to have the willpower to do it. And education is not necessarily something the city, like municipality, is responsible for. But I understand that my position is an influential one, right?
It's something that you have a passion for. It's something that you would like to see.
And it's something that would benefit the community at large, right? It would benefit the city of Panama City, of course, but it would benefit Bay County and it would benefit Florida. The other thing I think that as a city that we can do in a municipality is we can try to make the city more work from home friendly. Because like we said, we have 1,000 people net moving to the state of Florida every day, right? So some of these folks work from home. I work from home. And I can work from anywhere. Yeah. I could brought my laptop and be finishing up a project as we're talking. Obviously, I'm not doing that.
Elon Musk is against it.
He absolutely is against it, right? And for good reason.
Yeah.
Because most work out there is not production based,
Yeah.
right? Most work out there is not necessarily production based, or it's very difficult for it to be production based. So work from home works very, very well when you have production based type work. Like I don't care when you do it. I don't care how long it takes you to do it. I need the deliverable, and I'm going to pay you for your time for the deliverable.
Yeah.
That works really well, work from home, right?
Yeah, those jobs always work great because it's like, hey, listen, this is the deadline. This is what you have to get done. I don't care. I don't care if you're playing golf every day. I don't care if you're freaking out.
But I think you'll find that the work from home salary is probably higher than $47,000 a year.
Yeah, it is.
And so when you combine those two things together and you go, well, man, how do we attract people who have higher salaries? Well, you attract medical work by having people with more insurance.
Yeah.
More health insurance, right? Better or good health insurance, right? Around here, a lot of people have TRICARE, but a lot of people don't.
Well,
right?
Let's hit on that real quick because that was one of the things that I remember from my going through my stuff was a lot of people were like,
TRICARE pays the bills.
Well, it's not the government's responsibility to get involved with insurance and that and I was like, and so people were like, oh, whenever something would come up about healthcare, that was the main thing. But one of the things that I always said, and I think it was a conversation that I actually had with you, which was like when we talk about high-paying jobs, it fixes everything. It fixes the majority of
It's
things.
highly impactful.
So, and
highly
one of
impactful.
those things is healthcare. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't understand. How does a company?" Because these bigger companies come in and they provide healthcare for their
You don't
employees.
think that the hospitals
And
know exactly how many people have healthcare?
Hospitals will hire based on the insurance that the area freaking has. The reason why we don't
Why
have,
does water flow downhill?
Yep.
Because
the
there's
reason
less,
why we don't
there's less pressure
have
there.
as
Like it's
impactful,
gravity,
however you want to talk about it. Yeah, it literally comes down to that.
everything that's out there has its pushes and pulls, right?
Yeah.
This is why you don't build a hospital in the middle of, a place that has 2,000 people. That's it. When you if like Bay County had 10,000 people in it, we probably wouldn't even have a hospital. You know what I mean? Because there's not enough money there. There's not enough financial reason, and people can say
they
should do it anyway.
Perfect example is Mariana, where I'm from.
Yeah.
Right? They've got
Is there a hospital there?
They do. They have Jackson Hospital that's there.
Okay, they do
I think
that.
they have two.
But is it a big one? Is it a little one? Is it like
I know that whenever my grandfather or my grandmother have an issue, they travel to Flowers Hospital over in Dothan
because they want different care than what they're getting, right?
Yeah.
So the
It's
point
not a big
is
hospital.
that when you're trying to get the surgeons, the specialty care, when you're trying to get those folks in, they have to have a certain dollar amount, right? Outside of any reason of like, hey, well, I grew up here and I want to give back to my community, right? Outside of those types of self-motivating reasons, these folks went to medical school for a very long time. Usually, they expect to be compensated. They expect to have a bit of money coming at them, right? And so the more people in the community that have health care, the more doctors are willing to come to an area because they know they're going to be able to receive that income. Just like anybody else out there, that if another company offered them more money, there's a certain dollar amount that'll cause you to move. There is, right? There's a certain dollar amount that the vast majority of people out there, like I'm not going to move to California. Not going to happen. Yeah. But if somebody told me, hey, I will pay you $5 million to move to California, I probably would move to California and rent a room. Right? I mean, because it would just be silly not to. I'd rent the cheapest place possible, live there for a few years, and take my money and cry in my $100 bills at night. Right? Yeah. Like that. There's a certain point to where people will do things. Right? Now, obviously, that doesn't cover absolutely everybody, but it's a big brush and it covers a lot of people, right? So, same thing with doctors, same exact thing, right? So same thing with people who can work from home. Well, when all of a sudden you're not tied to any place anymore, and you're like, man, I'm paying all of my money to this state that has passed leftist policies, and I'm paying tens of thousands of dollars a month in taxes that I don't have to pay if I move to Florida. Yeah. It's kind of a no-brainer. Yeah. There's a lot of people who are moving. That's why we're still at 10,000 or 1,000 net per day. Yeah. So what can we do to attract people who work from home? That's another really interesting one. What can the city do to attract people who work from home? We can have better parks. We can have places that has Wi-Fi that they can sit at, coffee shops, those kinds of things. We can encourage that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know that was something that I think Alan had brought up when he came on the show, was the amount of red tape that needs to be cut.
It's ridiculous.
Is it?
We need to cut it. Yeah, we need to cut it. So that's the other piece, right? If you can't, that is something Dad always told me, so I say it. It probably sounds crazy to everybody else, but when you got a boat and you're trying to get underneath a bridge, and if you can't get underneath the bridge, you have to raise the bridge to get the boat under through it, right? Well, if you can't raise the bridge, sometimes you can lower the water. Yeah. Right? So what that means sometimes you got to wait for low tide. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can pump the water out. Right? Yeah. So what can we do using that metaphor? What can we do to encourage those kinds of things? And I'm absolutely with you, man. Like opening up a new business in this city needs to be like, hey, here's your checklist of all the things that you're going to need to get from us. And with AI nowadays, we should be able to every single thing that you could possibly, because it gets very, very convoluted very, very quickly. Like, oh, you want to open a new business? Well, are you going to have alcohol? Yeah. Okay, yes, you are. Okay, what kind of alcohol is that going to be? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It starts going down this road of,
Yeah.
okay, well, how many people are you able to have in your building? What does the fire marshal
it's
say?
capacity.
And
Yeah.
if it's a certain amount, now you have to have fire suppression. You know what I mean? So like you go down this road of if then, then this, right? If then type statements. And this is kind of stuff that can be programmed into an AI. And literally we could make that AI free to the public that small business owners could be like, well, hey, I want to open up this business. What kind of business is it? Well, this type of business. Okay, you're selling furniture. Are you selling alcohol?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is a silly question, but it has to be asked. And they're going to say no. Okay, well, that gets rid of all of that subset of questions, right? And then walks you through it and say, okay, here's the documents that you need to bring to the city. Here's what they need to look like. Here's some examples of what they need to look like. And so it prepares them and it arms them for some of the things that we have to do that we can't cut.
Yeah,
right?
I know some of the incentives that they've gone as far as in Lynn Haven have been like even going into building fees. Like they'll even waive some of that, help out with that to be able to bring business to that area.
Yeah.
Because you know just as much as I do. I mean, I believe that Panama City has taken a turn, man. It's doing great.
It is.
The only thing that I would say, man, I'm not a fan of your cobblestone roads.
Okay, so they're not cobblestones. I learned this.
I know
this.
they're not.
And as that was when going back to the very first topic, right? Like I raved again. I was like, oh, we shouldn't be putting in cobblestones. Like we shouldn't be doing that. You know, and I said that. I said that on the campaign trail, right? And so, but when I talked to citizens, I think it was a tone deaf thing. I think that the timing of it was really, really tone deaf.
Yeah.
When the commission voted to put in those roads. And used a grant, a $5 million grant from Governor DeSantis' his office, to put in those roads. I think it looks
pretty. It looks. Listen,
it's gorgeous.
It looks gorgeous.
But when you pull out every day and you ride over a pothole every day, and you see that going in, and it's like, oh, I've been forgotten. That part of the city's what's getting all the money. I've been forgotten. That's the message that you get.
Well,
right?
it was the damn potholes there on Beach Drive.
Yep.
Coming right there by, what is that, the gasoline plant or the oil plant?
That's West Beach Drive.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You're coming down that road, coming off of Beach Drive, and I hit a pothole on my Harley.
That's the next road in the city, like literally the next road that's going to get fixed.
I literally
throw your handlebars.
I had to go see a freaking chiropractor, but yet as soon as I came up and I took a left, I'm on this cobblestone road. I'm like, what the hell?
So
man?
they're actually
like,
pavers. They're actually.
Yeah.
They're technically, we're going to nerd out a little bit on roads. I've learned, dude, this almost 2 years has been
and
like.
The road is thinner, and I know we talked about that.
So there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And I think there is a section that is too thin. The rest of the sections are not going to be that thin. Mm-hmm. But my job, as I see it, because we had already started that, right? Mm-hmm. And it didn't make any darn sense to leave the rest of Harrison the old 90s look. Like, it just didn't make any sense. It's like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of situation down there, right? So my job as a commissioner, as I saw it, to do right by my constituents, to answer to my ward, was to make sure that no ad valorem dollars went into that. So that was my win on that, on the new, what's torn up now, and as it's going to continue ongoing, the only dollars that can be used in areas that are, considered depressed or considered, there's certain names for this, like brownfields or what's the other name for that? I'm forgetting it off. It's been designated. These areas have been designated. So these dollars can be used in these areas, but they can't be used in my ward because I don't have any areas that are designated that. So what that means is that if we get in a grant from Governor DeSantis again for $5 million, that we're not going to be using that on Harrison Avenue or downtown. That's my job as I see it. That was the mandate that was given to me by my constituents when I got elected.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean we can't continue the project, right?
Yeah.
It just means that, hey, the feds are giving us money that has to be used in a very specific area. Okay, let's use that money to make this area gorgeous and beautiful, to attract some of that a little bit of tourism down that area, you know what I mean? Wow. To help pay some more of those taxes that we don't want to pay.
Well, other than that, that was the only complaint that I had about that.
Yeah.
But other than that, man, downtown has never been, even when I was growing up, it's never been as active as what it is now.
It was horrible when we were growing up, man.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Crazy.
And I hear had some older folks say it'll never be the same way it was, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah, I'm
like,
fine
okay.
with that. Yeah, it was
Like, it's not going to be.
it's kind of not that good
Dillard's
before.
is probably not going to buy, a spot and move in. They're probably not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Well,
okay.
fine. We
right?
need local
okay.
companies that are down there anyway.
Well, we love Dillard's, but like that's not the feel of it. Like the buying your stuff, we have Amazon nowadays.
Yeah.
So businesses have to be, retail stores have to be very smart about what they're doing. And we have some very smart business or retail businesses down there that have carved out a niche, right? Yeah. I think that's what we're going to see moving forward. Not that Amazon's going to put bookstores out of business, but we have a bookstore down that's thriving.
Yeah.
Because they found their niche. They found it, right? And yeah, you could probably go buy all those books off of Amazon, but you don't have that same feel,
you're
right?
not going to be able to go down there, have a cup of coffee, pick up a book, and then go into a history class and have the beer.
And so that's the beauty of it, right? So I think we've got a good path moving forward on that. And by the way, those pavers that we put in that look like cobblestones, they actually last longer. They last longer than a regular asphalt road.
There's no doubt in my mind that they probably don't.
It's crazy, right? Like, but I'm like, okay, okay.
Last topic.
Yeah.
Cruise ship.
No.
No, you won't talk about it, or
no.
Is this a thing? Is it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
There was some discussion about a cruise ship, and all the discussion about the cruise ship that I have heard was Viking, which is river cruises.
Yeah,
and so a lot of times when you say cruise ship, people think of like Icon of the Seas, like 8,000 people.
Carnival.
This giant, huge ship with like roller coasters and all that stuff on it. That's what people envision when they think cruise ship, right? Because I mean that's what I cruise on.
Oh, dude, I was in Sunday school not too long ago, and the Sunday school teacher was like, "Oh yeah, I saw all the layouts for what it would look like if there was
somebody
a
put a giant boat. Somebody put a giant boat up against like the Panama City Marina. And then somebody put one up against the St. Andrews Marina just to show how big of a boat could dock there. Mm-hmm. And people immediately went to cruise ship and was like, oh, they're going to turn it into a cruise. Here's the deal with the cruise ship, right? A cruise ship, if you bring in a cruise ship, we can't use the port without converting the Panama City port into a terminal.
Exactly.
Right?
No,
that's huge.
I've heard, yeah, okay.
And that completely changes the direction and whatnot, and it's one of those things that we would be spending hundreds of millions of dollars just to make millions of dollars. You know what I mean? It just doesn't financially pan out.
Well, that was something that I had talked to somebody about anyway. I was like, I don't know if we would want to be a port for a huge cruise line anyway,
financially,
because do you know why?
Doesn't work.
Whenever I've gone on a cruise, there's been very little. I go into the area where I'm gonna, and I might stay there for a night, but dude, I ain't spending crap there. I ain't doing anything in that area.
But you have to have multiple cruises. Mm-hmm. That you've probably never been to a cruise port that had one ship coming in and out of it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like, you have to have multiples, and we would be competing against Tampa, Galveston, New Orleans. You know what I mean? Yeah. Mobile. We'd be competing against these ports for what? You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of cruise stops in the Gulf, Mexico and whatnot. Belize, we could probably get some of those cruises, but it wouldn't make enough money.
Yeah.
That's the point, right? So it just would not make enough money. So it just doesn't financially make any sense. Now, the other way that we could get a cruise, not a port, but a cruise stop would be to be it would be a port, not a cruise embarkation, disembarkation. I probably said that wrong. Terminal. A terminal is where you get on or get off the cruise ship permanently, right? A port is where you can stop. You've probably been on, if you've been on one, if you're listening to this, you've probably tendered before, where you literally just stop in the middle of the water and a little boat comes up and gets you and takes you into the port, right? If we were ever to do it, and I'm not saying that there's any plans for this, so please don't run off, but if we were to ever to do it, it would probably have to follow that model. It would probably have to be a floating barge of some sort, either out in the Gulf or in the bay, where the cruise ship would come in and You know,
You can go into Panama City Beach for the
exactly.
day.
You go to Panama City Beach. You go to Shell Island. You can go to, you know, everybody would share in that, right? That's probably the
Get
only
yourself an
path
Uber,
forward that
go
I
to
could see.
Pineapple Willie's.
And the residents may chime in on that and say, we don't want it. You know, maybe, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I think one of the biggest problems would be is one of those gigantic cruise ships coming through wouldn't want to come through our pass. I mean, it's wide enough and it's deep enough, but there's a lot of recreational traffic coming in and out of there. And when you get in a cruise ship, it's you don't want boats close to you like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that would shy them away. So the only cruises that probably would be interested in coming through our pass would be the much smaller ones, which are the river cruises. Much smaller ships. I mean, we're talking maybe 1,000 people at max.
Yeah, you could go over through West Bay to the Choctawhatchee and all through there.
Well, they would just use this as a stop, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would navigate. They would navigate through there. I don't know. I mean, that's not something I've deep dived into other than just this preliminary discussion. But I'm open, and this is where a lot of people in my position are not open about these things, because as soon as you say that, then somebody would be like, you know, Commissioner Grainger said that we're going to
be a stop,
and
we're going to be a stop.
Yeah, exactly. and it's like, no, I mean, but we can still discuss these things without, you know, taking them.
That you know just as much as I do. People have been talking about the cruise ship thing for a while, and I was more like, I'm going to ask about it because I hear about this all the time. I hear people talk about it all the time.
It'd make more sense to dump any
crazy
money that we would do there into the airport. Dead serious. Like the airport is rocking. Like it is insane. That airport is doing amazing.
Really?
Have you been there? Have you flown out?
Yeah.
Where'd you park?
Where did I park?
Where'd you park?
I didn't park.
You didn't park?
Uber. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Did you see the parking lot?
Yeah.
Like
It's always full.
It's always full.
It's always full.
It used to not always be full.
Yeah.
It used to not.
Yeah. It's always full.
It's always full.
And then, but
it just announced today.
Man, dude, it's so. But
Just
the thing
announced
about
today.
it. But the thing about it is I have to fly out of anytime I go somewhere. I got to fly out of like either Fort Walton or Pensacola because it costs way too much money to fly out of here.
Yeah, so the more flights we get, the cheaper it gets, right? Like seriously, like the more competition there is, the cheaper it gets.
That may be, but like even when Kendall was staying out in Colorado, you know, flying out of here and into Colorado, you know, a round trip or whatever was something stupid like $1,400. I can fly out of Pensacola and it's $75 one way. You know, 75, you know, $80 another. So I'm paying less than $200 to fly to Colorado and come back. It's like, why would I spend an extra $1,000 to fly? I mean, I'm not against the airport. I think it's great, but let's be honest, it's not affordable at all.
Yet.
Not yet. Hopefully one day it will become.
We'll get there. Yeah. I think we'll get there. And the reason I think we'll get there is because the TDC, not TDC, I'm sorry, Bay EDA.
Yeah.
My apologies, Bay EDA. Bay EDA just announced today that there's a new company coming in that's looking to hire 500 people in the aviation out of Bay County. Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. 500 people is huge.
That's huge.
Like,
that's
insane. And
well,
aviation,
that's
aviation
better
pays
than,
well, you know. It's
better than some of these other jobs.
And so because aviation, so Triumph, right? Like talking about Triumph grant, that kind of stuff. One of the ways that you can apply for and have success in Triumph grants is being able to hire. So Eastern Shipbuilding has done very well with this. They're like the poster company for this. Eastern Shipbuilding has done an amazing job using Triumph money to hire a ton of people and pay them more than $47,000 a year. And they're their first company ever to get a Triumph grant, get all the way through it, get audited, and be free and clear of the grant. Because you have to pay it back if you don't perform. You have to pay the money back, and that's a lot of money. And so that's huge. That's huge. So other companies have started to take note of that, and one of them is coming in. They're getting a $25 million grant from Triumph to build out a maintenance and operations hangar, basically, at the airport.
We need it nowadays.
To do R&D. That's huge.
Oh, wow.
So anybody who's in aircraft knows R&D in aircraft is just stupid expensive. Because you have to go through so much before the FAA will allow you to modify the plane.
Wow.
If you come up with a new gizmo or widget that there's like, oh man, this saves the airplane, thousands of dollars in fuel every trip. Like you're like 5 to 10 years out from the FAA allowing you to put it on the plane because it has to go through so much rigorous testing.
Yeah.
So to have an R&D expansion into this area is huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. I mean, it's again, it's one of those things that like a lot of people don't fully grasp it because it's just not, you don't deal with it every day. You know what I mean? You don't think about, if I make a change to the pivot tube of an aircraft that it has to go through that many years of testing and studying before it can be put on an aircraft. Now, I'm sure somebody out there is going to be like, well, actually, but you get what I'm saying, right? Like generally speaking, there's, when you're coming up with new stuff for aircraft, it has to be tested thoroughly. And I want it to be tested thoroughly, right? Like,
well, you're riding on the plane.
So to have any kind of new R&D is, I mean, you're talking about like that's like a car plant getting put in, you know what I mean? Like
I know we were paying.
It's just so expensive.
Do you remember? I think it was the county was paying for flights that were being flown by Southwest to make us a stop from like.
Yeah, to some degree, it makes sense to pay money to have somebody come in elsewise and just kind of like subsidize that a little bit to get it moving.
Yeah, we were doing that for a little while. I don't know.
But they're still
if
here.
We're still doing it. Yeah, no,
right.
They are,
so that's, I'm okay working with companies as long as it doesn't become a long-term like welfare type program where it's like they can't operate unless we're here feeding them. Like we can work with you, get you moving forward. And then, but I think it should be up and down I think it should be all the way up and all the way down. Meaning that if you're a small business and you're like, I need some help or I need some, that we can work with you. What that looks like may be different, but that we can work with you, you know what I mean? And give you some help. And
that's the reason why I used to talk about that was the incentives for like new business. And a lot of people were like, oh no, we don't like to do that because you give them a waive on like impact fees or whatever. And then they go out of business and they take the money and they run. And that's the reason why I was like, there's an easy way of doing that with like newer businesses that are coming in. You make it kind of similar to what you're talking about with the grant, performance based.
Yes.
You have to hit a certain number. You have to hit
or
a
just
specific.
Perform.
You have to perform, or else you don't get that money.
Yeah,
you get that money after a certain amount of time,
Exactly.
and it's a time period.
That's like
I love that idea. When I brought that up at the county level, people were like, "You can't do that," and I'm like, "Yes, actually, you can."
So, like with the SweetBay deal, there's zero risk to the city because if they don't perform, we don't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's I love that kind of stuff where it's the city doesn't really have to do a whole.
Well, it's a win-win for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody wins.
Yeah,
that's the that's what we try to seek out. So the CRA board recently applied, and there's 4 CRAs in the city.
Okay.
Right. There's 4 different ones, but the board is the same for all of them. So we just meet as one, and so. We just recently approved, and it's going to go live in January. So if you're in development or you're a small business and you're hearing this, the CRA has approved in any of the CRA districts that if you purchase a property and develop it, and you got to bring us the package beforehand. You got to come talk to us beforehand. But if you develop the property and you spend more than $500,000. Right, that's a lot of money to me and you. Mm-hmm. It's not a very high hurdle when you're developing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To buy a building is like $300,000, poof. And then to put money back into it, you may be looking at $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 just to fix it up again, right? Mm-hmm. So if you bring the value up of the building, the property appraiser is going to come and reappraise the property because that's going to happen regardless of what we do.
Yeah.
If you develop a property appraiser is going to reappraise it. Your taxable value goes up. And so the idea is that we will then share that taxed value that you have to pay back with you. Because you took a derelict building or you took a building and you increased the value of the building. That's the whole purpose of a CRA. The whole purpose of a CRA is to reduce blight and to revitalize an area.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we're solving for. So we've tried all kinds of different projects over the years, over the decades
Yeah.
or so that this thing's been open. And I think this is probably the best thing that we've done so far. It's the most aggressive one in the state, like in the entire state. It is the most aggressive. It's called a TIF rebate program. And the developer has to apply for it. They have to come before the board and say, this is the plan. This is what I'd like to do. They have to come talk to staff about it beforehand to get it approved. But it's what we're looking for. We're looking for people to come and develop and like make it better. And what I love about it is that it's $500,000.
Yeah.
So the little guy that's local, it's within his or her reach, right? I mean, if you've done this kind of stuff before, and you go to the bank and you say, "Bank, I've done this kind of stuff before. Here's how I've done it. Here's my business plan to get us from A to B and make us profitable on this development. Can I borrow the money?" Banks that do that will say yes.
Yeah.
Right? So the real estate folks and the developers, the contractors, they understand this space. And so when you talk about, hey, we're willing to give you back a portion, and when I say portion, I mean anywhere from 70 to 90% of the tax dollars that you pay in, and commercial's taxed at a higher rate than the rest of, like what you're used to paying at your house, your residential rate. Commercial is usually pays the majority of the taxes that come in off of ad valorem come in off commercial and industrial.
Wow.
I mean, it's when you look at a pie graph of how much money comes off residential.
So basically, if you're a developer right now in the county and you're not utilizing that, you're you need.
Or if you're looking for your next project, take a look in a CRA.
Yeah.
Take a look and combine that with the Unified Land Code development that we're about to pass in Millville and St. Andrews, those which are going to decrease lot lines. They're going to make it where you can develop all the way up to a lot line. Now it's got to meet certain standards. It's got to meet certain design standards to keep those neighborhoods looking old, but you can build brand new and it'll, fit the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Man, you ever gone to those cities that have like an old neighborhood, and it's like the whole neighborhood just kind of turned into like a whole area, where like with restaurants and that kind of thing. Like there's somebody lives like right next door to a restaurant.
We saw that when I went out to Colorado. Kendall, you took me to that restaurant. It was like an old house. Right after I got off the plane, in that area, there was a bunch of neighborhoods around it. But it was like an old area.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, people were like living there.
Yeah.
And, like they turned this old house into like a badass lunch and breakfast place. It was pretty awesome.
Let's tie this all together, man.
Yeah.
Do you know what the number one way for somebody who's living in poverty to get out of poverty?
Turn it into a business. I don't know.
Cook food and sell it.
Yeah.
And we've made that too difficult. We as government has made that too difficult. The number one way for somebody who maybe hasn't had the opportunity to go to college, maybe couldn't join the military, or has their life decisions or have put them where they're at now, whatever the means, whatever the reason, if they can't go to the bank and say, "Bank, I need to borrow money," and the bank won't give them the money. The number one way for somebody to get out of poverty is to better their station in life, so to speak, is to cook food and sell it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you start looking at those neighborhoods and you start looking at, well, I have a house, I could cook in my house.
Yeah.
And turn my house into a restaurant. That is a different, much, there's a little bit of hurdles to that, but they're much lower hurdles than, hey, I want to go open up a restaurant on Harrison Avenue or Grace Avenue. That you're looking at, if the building doesn't have fats, oils, and grease, buddy, you're looking at $150,000 to $300,000 just in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it doesn't have a kitchen, you're looking at $300,000 in just kitchen.
Yeah.
Just kitchen.
Yeah.
Not talking about front of house stuff.
Yeah.
Like it is such. There's so many barriers to entry to that some of it's government, some of it's just the cost of doing things. But if you've got a house an ancestral home in one of these neighborhoods, or maybe you can afford the house.
Yeah.
Maybe you can buy the house, or maybe you can rent the house. What we're doing is we're making it to where you can have a restaurant on like a corner home or those kinds of things, or you can have a small corner business.
Well, a lot of people are against that because of the zoning stuff.
But you can't do it because of the zoning.
Yeah.
We're making it where you can, because we realize that other cities are doing this and they're seeing growth. Yeah. They're seeing not the growth of like, sky rises and things like that, or, people coming in and just, pushing people out of the neighborhood. We're seeing growth in the sense of, it's an area where people want to go.
Yeah.
We're seeing growth in the sense of, hey, a developer is going to come in there and build a single family home, or a duplex or something like that, and put it in there, but it matches the neighborhood. So it looks like it fits, right?
Yeah.
And making it a quaint, wonderful area for people to live and work. Mm-hmm. So we're not doing anything new, with the exception of the TIF. The TIF rebate thing, we're probably on the bleeding edge of that from an aggressive standpoint. A lot of others,
incremental financing.
Yep. A lot of other ones, a lot of other CRAs, they put a lot of guardrails around it, and then they don't get what they're looking for. You know what I mean? Like they'll get like one developer, they'll try to take them up on it. Yeah. And so I'm just like, it doesn't make any sense. If you're solving for development and you want development, then you need to pull all the stops out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Pull all those out. Yeah. But make it where everybody can get a hold of it. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's $500,000, because somebody may invariably think, well, I can't afford $500,000. I can't get to that. And that was something I was fighting for. Like, let's make it $100,000. It doesn't make financial sense. Wow. It just doesn't. The math just doesn't work out. You know what I mean? Wow. So if you increase,
makes it a little bit harder to.
Yeah.
And because it shows dedication behind the person that's willing to go the extra mile.
No, I mean literally, the math just doesn't math out. I mean, literally, if you bought a property or leased a property and increased the value of the property, and you only put $100,000 into it, you might only increase the value of that property by
$50,000, $30,000.
Yeah, and so now you're talking about, okay, your taxes on that only went up $1,000 a year. Yeah. We're gonna have pay somebody to basically figure all that stuff out on the front end. Yeah. Like we haven't even broke even yet on that. You know what I mean? So it just doesn't make financial sense to have the staff to do that. Like there has to be there's a certain cliff there where it's like, okay, now it's feasible financially for anybody to even do this. And 500,000 is that mark. Yeah. So does that make sense?
No, that makes complete sense. Some great things coming that way then. Yeah, we'll probably see a lot more development down in that area.
I'm hoping,
yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
I pretty much hit on everything that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Was there anything else that like maybe you wanted to talk about that we didn't hit on?
Yes.
Sweet. Let's do it.
All right. So again, going back to what do the constituents want, right? So what I heard was they wanted us to move forward on a lot of just move forward, right? On the marinas, Martin, the Civic Center, just move forward somehow, some way. Obviously, individuals have their own input on that, right? But the biggest one that I got was fix roads. Fix roads. Fix roads.
Fix the roads.
Fix roads. Fix roads. So, again, can't raise a bridge, lower the water, right? So if we're looking at $1 million a mile to fix the roads, now that's not resurfacing. That's replacing water, sewer, everything underneath, right? Yeah. And so a lot of times a pothole is a pothole not because the asphalt failed, it's because the stuff under the asphalt failed. And
sinkholes.
Sinkholes are usually because the sewage system failed.
Yep.
Your road is leaking because the water system has failed, unless that water stinks, in which case it is a pressurized sewer system that has broken. So if the water doesn't stink, it's clean water. It's which is the lowest priority to be fixed because it's clean water. It's not going to hurt anybody. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily hurt the environment directly. The number one priority is the sewage spills. The ones where it's like there's nastiness pumping into the road right now. Those are the number one priority. So if you're driving along, all of a sudden the road has a pothole, it's probably because the sewage system failed underneath it, and it has been for months on end sucking the sand and the dirt underneath the road into the sewer system. And you just don't know until there's literally nothing underneath the asphalt there until you drive over it, and then boom, you now have a sinkhole, right? So other people have called me and been like, there's all of a sudden a 2-foot hole underneath this road. Where in the world did that come from? That's a sewer issue, right? So
You get that a lot down in St. Andrews.
we get that a lot all over the city because the city has for decades not put any money into the roads. For decades not put any money into the roads, right?
Is there a reason for that?
To keep the taxes low. So this goes back to a lot of people say that the Panama City Marina made money
I don't know.
because they look at the financials on it and they're like, oh, it made money. It did not make money because
Money loser.
because
right?
any business out there would account for their overhead. They would account for, hey, we're going to have, if they own the building, we're going to have to replace the air conditioner at some point. We're going to have to replace the roof at some point. A roof is only good for 10 to 20 years, depending on the type of roof, right? So let's say it's a 20-year roof. Well, if you know what a 20-year roof costs, well, then you need to take that dollar amount and divide that up by 20, and you need to be storing that money away every month, right? That's overhead. So similarly, the marina should have been setting aside money for maintenance and operations. Well, they weren't. So the marina was falling apart. And anytime it would fall apart, then they would run to the commission, and the commission would have to solve it. But that's not how a business should be ran. Well, the marina is an enterprise system, and enterprise systems are supposed to be ran like businesses. That's how this works. So, anyway, it goes back to that we don't want to spend money. We don't want to spend any money. If we don't have to spend any money, we don't have to raise any taxes. Well, ultimately, stuff starts falling apart, right? And if you haven't incrementally addressed that over time, if you haven't done that, all of a sudden you're left with this Goliath of an issue that you've got to fix. And so we're trying hard not to raise taxes. We didn't do it this time, but we're lowering the water and we're pumping it out, right? So this is the back of that analogy. We recently bought a device called the Asphalt Zipper. And this thing chews up asphalt and sub-base. Chews it up. Now you're probably like, well, that doesn't make any sense, right? So it allows us the versatility to go into an area and chew up just one side of the road, the center of the road, all of the road, whatever we want to do. So if the road needs to have sewer or water replaced, we can choose to, based on the condition of the road, come in and just do a portion of it or do all of it. We've also, and what that does is it chews up the asphalt and it recycles it to create a sub-base.
Yeah.
And then you run a roller right behind it, and it's now your sub-base. If you need to have, for engineering reasons, if you need to have more gravel added, because some areas are just clay sub-base, so you start getting into it and realize, crap, it's clay sub-base, we're going to need more. Yeah. That's easy. Then you just run gravel behind it as well. But you don't have to do all of the destruction part that you would normally have to do in doing a contract on road repaving. They'll come in, they'll reclaim the asphalt, send it off somewhere else. All that stuff costs a lot of money. So we've also purchased an asphalt machine, and we're sending our crews off to training to learn how to do asphalt for FDOT standards. And our intention there is not to replace the companies here locally that do that. Our intention here is to supplement, because when you put out a bid for a company, you put out a request for bids to do something small. It's astronomically expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it costs them so much money to mobilize the equipment.
Yeah.
Well, we don't pay for mobilization.
Yeah.
If it's a city, truck doing it, we're already paying for that.
Yeah.
Right. So we're already paying for the truck. We're already paying for the front end loader. We're already paying for, this asphalt machine. We're already paying for the salaries of the guys that are working on the systems. You know what I mean? Like so what we've done is we've taken it where if it's a simple resurface in like a neighborhood road that doesn't necessarily need a lot of infrastructure issues underneath it. If it's just a simple resurface, We've changed that from $100,000 job to a $10,000 job. Because again, we're already in for all that other stuff. We've already paid for it, right? And so that's where I'm excited, because I think when we get to rocking and rolling, you're going to see the neighborhoods. We're going to probably do like the big long roads are going to be contracted out, and have all that stuff done with the big boys that do their stuff. You know, they'll have to bid on it and all that good stuff. But all the finger roads will be our own guys, and we can get in there and we can start working on some of that stuff that don't have any damaged pipes underneath.
The turnaround time on that will be a lot quicker too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm excited because
that's exciting.
Yeah,
I hope some of the other cities kind of pick up on that. If they're able.
I think they're watching.
I think it's probably cost effective.
So it is a little costly on the front end. I mean, it is. That machine costs $300,000.
But over the course of time,
dude, it'll pay for itself in the first year.
Yeah.
Right. We don't even have to make a payment on it for a year with a 5% interest rate. It's a $300,000 machine with a 5% interest rate. We don't have to make a payment on it in the first year. And with the infrastructure surtax dollars that are coming in, we'll likely be able to use those dollars to pay for the machine outright. So we may not even pay any interest on the machine at all. But the point is that if I can stretch the dollar, right? If I can stretch the dollar out, so we're getting infrastructure surtax dollars in, we're going to get SweetBay dollars in, right? So when we combine the two together, so to speak, in just an aggregate dollar amount, and I can stretch those dollars out and get a 10-to-1 value on asphalt, we're winning. Like that, we're winning. You know what I mean? And so I think, obviously, we can't do it all overnight. And so some roads are going to have to be chosen based on certain conditions. Those conditions being like how much damage their infrastructure is underneath the road and how bad the surface of the road is. But everybody's road, we're going to get back into a swing of every single road in the city needs to be resurfaced every 10 years. So we'll have a 10-year plan these guys are going to be doing this for the foreseeable future.
Nice.
Right? So it'll be where the city of Panama, you'll know when the city of Panama City's roads end, because that's when the potholes will begin. That's my goal.
Yeah.
So, and nice. I think we're doing it. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, it's roads. It's not sexy. It's not.
No. Well, no. I think everybody's got complaints about it. I know that I have my own complaints about going down into the city and having those issues.
I want to make other commissioners upset with the city outside of the city of Panama City. I want to make the other commissioners. I want to make the commissioners of Lynn Haven upset with us. I want to make the commissioners of Springfield and Callaway and Parker and Panama City Beach. I want to make them, in Mexico Beach. Like I want to make them.
They got everything figured out down there in Panama City.
I just want them to be like, my citizens tell me every time they drive through Panama City, they know when Panama City limits end. You know what I mean? Because that's when the potholes begin. That's what I want, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the goal is to be that level of service on our streets and roads, and to put in programs in place that help fund them and make sure that we're taking care of that, because that's the first thing that the citizens, when they come out of their house, that's the first thing they see is our roads.
Well, it's the first thing that even tourists that come to the area, they see, or people that are even contemplating moving here. Yeah. The first thing that people notice is a road, because it's like, dang, man.
Surprised you didn't want to talk about the mall.
Well, the mall, they're already.
It's not ours.
Well, I remember going to the NAACP forum and it came up, and I can't remember what you said. I had Michelle Bryan on.
It's private property, so we can't force them to do anything. That's not within code. I mean, if obviously we forced the Sears building to go down because Seritage didn't want to talk to us. They didn't want to take action, so. Anytime the city. Apparently, I do have one more topic. Yeah.
8:22.
You'll have to edit that out.
I was just about to be like, we need to take a drink break. I got to go get something else to drink. But the code enforcement.
Yeah.
So issue on the mall.
Yeah. Sorry.
How much did the owner did they get fined for? The crap.
So, all right. So code enforcement,
because they were an eyesore.
Yeah.
And so other people got fined that were eyesores.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be clear. Dillard's and JCPenney's are awesome, right?
Yeah.
They have been great to work with. They've done a great job at keeping their store open and putting money back into their store, and they are actually the highest performing JCPenney's and Dillard's in this region. So we are very happy with JCPenney's. We don't want them to go away by any means, right? Now, in contrast with that, the owners of the other two parts. So there's 4 owners. There's Dillard's, JCPenney's, Seritage, and Hendon. Seritage owns the Sears building, or what used to be the Sears building.
It's gone.
It's kind of like if you look at it on a map, there's like that bottom triangle. If you just draw a line, everything down from that is Seritage owned.
Wow.
So where the old auto center used to be, that's owned by Seritage, right? A lot of that's going to get taken up by the right of way for the flyover that's coming in there. So Seritage was kind of just basically saying, well, we don't know what we're going to have to do, so we're just not going to do anything. So ultimately, code enforcement, or as we call it now, code compliance, finds they only have 2 tools. One is asking, and the other one is forcing. Right. So that's the only 2 tools that code compliance has. So the code compliance come to you and say, "Hey, here's the code. Can you please fix it?" And if you choose not to, well, there's only one tool left. We force you to do it, right? And so what does that look like? That looks like fines. That looks like bringing you in front of the magistrate and saying, "Hey, we've told this person many times to do the thing." Before you get to the magistrate, like, you've had multiple chances to fix it. And a lot of times the magistrate will say, "Well, you just need to fix it. We're ordering you to fix it. And if you don't, here's your penalty." And so code compliance can apply penalties as well, but usually the penalties are deferred. Usually that's what happens. It's like we're gonna build up an amount, and if you fix it, we'll wipe all that away. Right? The goal is to fix it. That's always code compliance's goal, is just fix the issue, right? The code compliance, the guy that's writing the code ticket doesn't get any extra money for writing the ticket. You know what I mean? Or doesn't get any extra money for applying the fine, so to speak. So it's just used as a tool. So if you don't fix it, then ultimately those fines come to bear, right? Through a magistrate, a judge magistrate. So that's what happened. That's what happened with Seritage. The magistrate basically said, either you're going to knock it down or we're going to knock it down, because you've chosen to leave it derelict and you've chosen to create hazards for the city and nuisance areas for the city. So what that looks like is standing water, places where people, vagrants can go in and light fires and stay and do all kinds of stuff. So ultimately they chose to knock it down, and I'm not sure that they were fined. They may have been, but I'm not sure if they were fined, because of what I said earlier. We can stack up all these fines, and then once you come under compliance, we usually do away with them as a way of just not trying to push the issue further. So if code compliance is forcing somebody to do something, it has taken a long time to get there. I promise you that. It's taken a long time to get there. Now, that's not to say that code compliance doesn't have conversations with people. I'm talking about when it goes to the magistrate.
Yeah.
When it goes to the magistrate, I mean, we're talking months on months on months where somebody could have taken care of the problem. So a lot of times that's when people start yelling and screaming when they get in front of a magistrate, because they're like, the city's forcing me to do this or forcing me to do that. And it's like, man, you've had like at least 90 days to be able to fix this or bring it into compliance. At least. I mean, a lot of times they've had 6 months to a year. So that's not the most pleasant part, right? But Hendon owns the center. They own the mall. When you think about the mall, when you think about when we used to go to the mall and walk around into the different stores, not the anchor stores, but the interior part of the mall. Yeah. Aladdin's Castle, Piccadilly, that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Where Victoria's Secret was. That is owned by Hendon. And Hendon has been very responsive to us. Anytime we say, hey, something's wrong here, they fix it. And so,
why are they still holding on to it? There's
I
no
think
plan.
they want to sell it. I don't know. We don't truly know why what's going on here, but they haven't moved on it at all. And I know that Dillard's, and I assume that JCPenney's wants to see movement. Nobody wants to have that as their neighbor, right? So
yeah, can they actually destroy that portion of the mall and then just keep
this is interesting.
Sears or JCPenney and Dillard's stay there? Like, I don't even know
So
how
when I
that would
first
work.
came on board, and when I was getting briefed, I was briefed that no, the center of the mall could not be demoed because of infrastructure reasons. Now I'm finding out, and literally like this week, finding out information that may fly in the face of that.
Really?
So it's not.
Yeah, it's not official.
It's not official yet, and it's not. It's something that needs to be explored.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. So we're gonna explore it. We're gonna explore.
I think you freaking should. Like, it's like one of those. Like I said,
But-
I mean, if it's just dead space, I know there have been several things that were talked about.
Let me.
Yeah, go
Because
ahead.
I'm thinking through like what maybe somebody might be thinking after I've said this, right? So, what I was told was true. What I was told was true, but things have changed. So, yeah. So that I will say that the folks who briefed me that the interior of the mall could not be demoed because there was utilities between the buildings, that was true. Yeah. So, but now I'm finding that there's been some changes, and they need to be explored. So I'll leave it at that because it may still be true. It may still be true.
Yeah.
But I'm finding indications that it may not be. So
Nice. Yeah. Well, things
so
change.
things change. So we may have a path forward, maybe. So
Yeah.
I still think that we need to regularly engage, and we have been engaging with Hendon. We have been and going up there and saying, "Hey, we all please do something with this."
There's enough area there to do like a pure park for the city side. There's enough room there.
There's enough area there to do a performing arts center.
Yeah, I think one of the things.
Pure park style.
Yeah, one of the things that was, well, if you look at, and I know this is going to sound stupid, but it's about the size of that area. It's about the size of the Battery in Atlanta for the Atlanta Braves stadium.
Yeah. You put a stadium there. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things, because it's so centrally located.
Yeah, it
like if you
is.
had a stadium there, we had like a minor league team of some sort, and then also like our concerts would go there. It's
Wouldn't
like
that be
screw the
cool?
Civic Center.
like
I mean, it's like everybody wants to talk about the
Savannah banana kind of thing.
yeah.
going on. That'd be
Everybody
cool.
talks about
Yeah.
like the Civic Center and losing the Civic Center, and it's like, dude, like, I mean,
Yeah.
dude, but then again, I mean, going to the heartdout that goes
Yeah,
behind the Civic
yeah.
Center, I get that. But what I'm saying is, the Civic Center's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. It's gone.
The question is,
You have-
does a windowless building going into that spot make sense?
No, not for the money.
And I think the vast majority of people out there will be like, no, it doesn't.
No.
You know,
But
that doesn't mean we
the-
sell it or give it away either.
No, but
Yeah.
but when you start talking about that area where the mall is at, and if you start talking about the stadium,
3 major highways,
everything
3
connects
major
right there.
highways, yep.
People would stay. Here's the thing:
And
people go to
231's getting expanded to 6 lanes.
people go to the Gulf Coast Jam,
Yeah.
and they will stay in Panama City. They'll stay
Yeah.
in Lynn Haven or
Yeah.
whatever. They'll come down here from Alabama or Georgia, wherever. If you had a major, you know how much revenue you'd be bringing in to the city and to even Panama City Beach would get a large
So-
portion of that, but so would Lynn Haven and some of these cities that are kind of like overlooked. People would stay in Callaway.
So one of the problems with the stadium is that a lot of they're very expensive to build. First of all,
yeah.
and they almost always require all of the tax revenue coming off them to go back into the stadium.
Yeah.
They just won't build it unless you're offering that kind of deal.
You would have to have events though that are packing in enough people to be able to make money off the sides. So you're off your restaurants.
So there's been a lot of
hotels,
studies on
and things
that.
like that. Is it even worth it?
A city of our size
Probably
is not. We don't have enough of the population. Even the county doesn't have enough population. Now, could we do a minor league baseball team? Yes, I think we could, but it would not need to take that property.
No.
But we could. I mean, that's a discussion. I haven't put a whole lot of thought into where it would go, but yeah, we could probably host a minor league baseball team. I honestly think that we could do an ice rink too. I think that would be kind of neat.
And that's something down in Tampa.
Yeah, like
they got hockey down there.
I don't think people realize how many Canadians we have here.
Yeah,
and
we
Canadians,
do.
like
We do.
Canadians, find a Canadian that doesn't like hockey. Find one that doesn't like hockey. Like seriously, like it's like they love it. It's like Mexicans, you love soccer. You know what I mean? It's like that's the national sport. They love soccer. It's like Canada is hockey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like soccer's easy to play on a field. We got plenty of that, but we don't have anywhere to play ice hockey. So I don't know. It's too costly for us to do it. It would definitely have to be like a P3 type situation. But I mean, I'm open to stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where somebody comes in and says, "Hey, we should do because you could activate that space pretty well easily. You can ice rink. If you do a NHL style ice rink, it holds 6 pickleball courts.
Yeah,
6.
Wow.
So if you do it indoors, which you'd have to if you're doing ice, then you could have a roller skate rink, an ice skate rink, and pickleball courts all inside. You could even do an event space if you wanted to. You know what I mean? Like each day of the week, you just pull the tiles up.
Yeah.
Or put tiles down. Just depending on what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's just ideas.
So you have ideas
I do,
for that area if need be, if it ever came up?
For the mall area, yeah, we don't own any of that. We don't own any of it, right? So we're not going to force anybody to do anything. We're not, other than knock that building down. We're going to force people to comply with code for sure, but we're not going to force anybody to build. We can't. We're not going to do that. We're not going to eminent domain it and try to that's what some other places have done. They'll eminent domain that entire space, buy it, pay through the nose for it, and then revitalize it. Yeah. I think if you go back and you analyze those types of deals, the city doesn't usually wind up coming out on the good end of that. Yeah. It's very destructive. It flies in the face of how most of our constituents believe, which is if you own something, you own it, and you shouldn't have to be forced to sell it. And then it just financially just doesn't work out. It's much better to leave it in the private sector and let the private sector figure it out. But the city can take donations.
Yeah,
and that's a mechanism I don't think we've fully used. I think it's a tool that I don't think the city has fully worked through yet. And those of you out there that own businesses or that develop, that donating money at the end of the year helps reduce taxes. So that may be a play there. I don't know.
Sponsorships.
Well, no, what I mean is if land was donated to the city, they could write that off on their taxes as a corporation. The city then could build a performing arts center on top of it.
So there's a difference between that and sponsorships?
What I mean is that...
what I'm saying is a lot of people, that's one of the arguments that I think like the Libertarian Party always comes up with, like most of our parks and stuff like that should never come out of taxpayers' dollars. It's something that should be like you can get enough corporate companies or even local companies that come along and they sponsor it and they put enough money behind it, they can make it happen rather than it coming out of taxpayers' dollars. So when I say sponsorships, that's what I mean.
Yeah, so to build it, to just, get shovels in the ground, I think we'd be looking for donations.
Yeah.
And then to keep it ongoing, to keep it moving forward, then I would say sponsorship is the way to go. That's what we do with our ball
fields.
Yeah. That's what we do. It's it's businesses sponsor. They get a thing out in the field.
There's
a
a
sign out in
plaque.
the field.
Yeah.
And then every year it's a certain dollar amount to get the sign out in the field, and that just helps helps with the uniforms. It helps with all that stuff. It helps give kids something to do other than get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So it gives them a great outlet to be productive. But what I was getting at is you can donate to the city, and I'm not suggesting everybody out there go donate to the city. I mean, if you want to, great, do it. But the point is that if you're a big corporation and you need a tax break, then you could carve out land and donate land to the city, and the value of that is now you could write that off on your taxes. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be sell it, do something with it. It could be, hey, I haven't talked to them about this, but it could be something along the lines of, hey, just if you'd be willing to donate some land to us as a city, and you write that off on your taxes and get, lower your tax burden as a corporation, and then that would give us the land to start, going after the donations and saying, hey, we can action this now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what I'm talking about is this
Partnerships
going to
throughout
happen?
the community
I don't know.
is a lot. A lot of people don't think like that.
But if you don't talk about it, it won't happen.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't talk to people and start putting these ideas out there, like nobody's going to execute on it. Right? Yeah. So I think engaging the public and having the public, and that's something that we get a lot. Yeah. We get a lot of that is, hey, why don't you put a performing arts center at the mall? That'd be perfect for it. Well, yeah.
Sure, you got the money. Oh, yeah, you want to start the check right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another one, is people are like, well, why don't you just do this? And it's like, yeah, get your checkbook out and we'll do it, I mean, that's
You're already
that's
complaining
easy.
about the taxes, and now you want me to go off and build multi-million dollars.
Yeah, you want it to be the Keel Performing Arts Center, man? Strike me a check for $30 million, buddy. It's yours. We'll build it how you want to build it, It's if we're not ultimately paying for it, then great. You want it to be pink? Sweet, we'll paint it pink. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's I don't know that anybody wants that, but you know what I mean? It's if you're striking the check and you're donating the money, then you have input. Yeah. You have the most input on what it's going to look like, where maybe where it's going to be, depending on that, right? Yeah. But like if we don't have the land, then we can't even begin the discussion, if that makes sense. So, I mean, it's and performing arts centers don't make money. There's 3 in the nation that make money, and those are outliers.
Same thing with civic centers.
It's the same thing.
Civic centers are a money loser.
Yeah, civic centers and performing arts centers are the same thing. Event centers do make money. Event centers actually can make money. There are some that do lose money. But comparing them side by side, when you say, okay, performing arts center and an event centers are much more likely to be able to be profitable. Performing arts centers almost always have to be subsidized. Yeah. And so then what you want to do is not have something that you have to subsidize heavily. Yeah. So winning in this situation is the city only puts in $50,000 a year into it instead of $500,000. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's and with $50,000 we could probably get that covered with sponsorships and grant money or whatever, but it still has to be subsidized, right? Yeah. So then it's just what is subsidized. So the Civic Center was $500,000 a year when it was operational. That's what we were subsidizing it to. $500,000 a year subsidizing it, because a building that size is very expensive to heat and cool. It really is. It's very expensive.
I wonder how much it brought in. Average.
It did not make money. I mean, it didn't, because we had to subsidize it, right?
Well, yeah, I know. I'm trying to figure out what like how much it made. I know that it didn't make anything, like no gross. So, but what I'm saying is like, how much did it actually like bring in, like the money? I know that it's in the negative, but how much it's actually bringing in physical.
Yeah, I mean, each year I think value changed, but so when you look at, like, say, the Martin the Martin's got three. That whole complex is three separate buildings, and so the Tennessee House is going to be event space.
Yeah.
Event spaces make money, right? So that's going to be 2 stories of event space, which we badly needed downtown. The Martin is going to be refurbished, so it'll be the Martin Theater as we know it and love it, right? And then next door to the Martin is going to be the Ritz, and that's going to be kind of a restaurant, maybe a speakeasy. It's going to be a space that's going to be activated to where you can either go and have a drink or go and have a meal. But the point is that moving forward, what I want to do is lease all 3 spaces to the same company, because like a hammock, you got a post on one side and a post on the other that supports the hammock in the middle, right? The event center is one post and the restaurant is the other post. Both of those assets can make money. So program the middle, because you know you're not making money there. So the middle is subsidized by the 2 posts on the sides, and the city's not subsidizing it. So then the citizens of Panama City aren't having to put their own tax dollars into it anymore. Does that make sense? So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking at is, hey, you know, for decades we subsidized the Civic Center for $500,000 a year. You know what I could do with $500,000 a year? We could lower taxes. You know what I mean? Like $500,000 a year. We could lower it by, I mean, a little bit, but it's if we can find other ways and other mechanisms by thinking creatively about these problems and thinking about creative solutions to these problems, that people win, because this company would win. Yeah, you know, they're going to win because when somebody comes to the show at the Martin, they're likely going to spend money next door. You know what I mean? Like when they do the event center, when somebody hires out the event center, they're going to have to probably use the food that's made over in this other, so they're going to be able to control food and beverage in all 3 buildings. And so they're going to be able to make money off that, right? Not off of the ticket sales, of course, but they're going to be able to make money off the food and beverage. And so that's what you want. And so then you don't have the city running it anymore, because the city doesn't run things very well. Yeah. We do police very well. We do fire very well. We're starting to do roads better. We're going to get there though. We do water and we do sewer, right? Those are the things that we do. We don't manage marinas very well. I mean, we have a good manager for the marina, right? We have good people, but we have a giant bureaucracy that those people have to work through in order to get anything done. And a regular business doesn't. The marina manager, it took him 6 months to work through the bureaucracy to get that bait. To get that bait shop? No, the bait vending machine. The frozen bait vending machine that's out there on the marina. It took him 6 months from conception to delivery. It took him 6 months. And that's not because he wasn't trying. That's not because he was doing a bad job. He was doing a great job. It's just the bureaucracy he had to work through to get the approvals and to get all the stuff done to where he could have that. 6 months, man. That's crazy. From a business perspective, that's insane. Yeah. So, again, let's get those things where the city gets in its own way. Yeah. Let's get out of the business of doing those things and hand them off to somebody else, and then just take money off of it, right? Take money off of it. When we're profitable, take money off of it. The Martin may never make $1 for the city. It may never make $1 for the city. But if we take the dollars that it does make and put those into a sinking fund, so where we have now repair, so where it's just a little self-generator, a little generator of money. So when the city makes $1 off of it, that dollar goes back into a sinking fund. So when somebody breaks something at the Martin, we have money to fix it. Yeah. And so now in perpetuity, the Martin will be taken care of because it'll have its own little fund.
So the stuff that I've heard about an amphitheater for the Civic Center, that's a thing, right?
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's already done? It's already planned?
I mean, it's we really need a master plan for that area. We really do. And people are like, well, why don't you already? So, well, city moves at the pace of months.
It's like the government.
It is. Being in the military, you hear the term "hurry up and wait," right? Yeah, hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait.
Well, a lot of people don't understand that. By the way, let me explain this real quick, because a lot of people, they hear that when a military member says that, or someone and it's like, hurry up get this done
Now.
so you can just wait around
Yeah,
for the next thing that comes around. A lot of people don't understand that's what you mean when you say hurry up and wait.
Yep.
Hurry up, get this done, and now sit there.
Yeah. And do
Because
nothing.
and do nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the city, I thought government moved slow, being in the Air Force for 20 years. And then I joined the city, and oh boy, we move slow. It moves in months. So what can take a business a week to go from conception to birth,
Yeah.
us it takes months. And so I'm trying to work on some of that stuff too.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just, oh my gosh, it takes so long to get anything done. And then I have people who come to me and say, hey, I need to get this thing done. Can we get it done? And I'm like,
By the time you get it done, you have to look back and be like, oh, I forgot we did that.
no, it's more like I try to manage expectations on the front end. You know, if you need it done tomorrow, not going to happen. So the things that are enterprise, the things that need to have that quick, you know, we need to be out of it, right? We need to be out of it. Now, there is value in slowing things down and going, let's look at this, you know. There is value in that in some situations. But when you're trying to be, when you have the profitable arms of the city that do that, you don't want to have the bureaucracy tied to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's value in slowing down and going, which roads do we need to do first?
Yeah.
Let's take time and thoroughly think this through. You know, where can we get the best bang for our buck? Because it's not a immediate pressing issue. You know what I mean? It's not like roads are just falling into an abyss and people are dying. You know what I mean? There's time.
Yeah.
So let's utilize some of that time. But when it's something like, hey, you know, whether or not this thing can be approved or that thing can be approved, that we can make more money off of, we don't need to be in that. So that's my philosophy on it.
Yeah.
I'm a libertarian at heart. I do think that the libertarians don't have answers for everything.
Yeah.
You know, if like the idea of you know,
The idea sounds good, but man, there's a lot of things that don't come together.
without government, how do we pave the roads, right? Like that's the big argument of the libertarians. And it's like, well, I hear you, man, but who's paying for the roads? You can donate money. If you were like, hey, I want my road paved, you can literally write a check to the city and say, I want my road paved and I'm going to donate this money and this money needs to go to pave my road. And we would have to pay, we would pave your road.
Yeah.
If we wanted to use that money, we would have to accept it for budget resolution change.
Yeah.
And then we would have to pave your road. Like that's how that works, but nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
Right. And we have plenty of affluent people in the city, like plenty. Like we have a few billionaires that live in the city.
Yeah.
And it's like and that's okay. If they don't want to donate money to pave the roads, that's okay. Right. Like, but the point is that the libertarian argument is, well, people would pay to donate the road. You know, people would donate
Because
to
they
the
would
road.
get tired of driving on it. It's like, no, they don't, because they already don't do it.
Exactly. That's my point. It's just well, if that was the case, I'd already be getting checks in when it's like, hey, here's $1 million, fix this road, you know, and that's nobody's doing
driving
that.
to Walmart and hitting 5 potholes. Go fix them. Here's money.
And I can tell you, the folks that have that kind of money that could write that check, I'm not one of them. But
they're
like
not driving to Walmart.
But
they're not driving
well,
anywhere.
some of them are actually. Some of them, yeah, like seriously, some of them are very, very affluent, and they don't spend it. You know, that's how they keep it. They just don't spend it, right? But they know.
Yeah.
They know that they could write a check to the city. They know this. They know they could write a check to the city and make it happen. They know that, and it's like, so the libertarian argument falls apart because if in that case, because you know, if people are you know, willing to pay for roads, then they would pay for roads. You know, well, they're not doing it now, but I do like the freedom and liberty aspects of it. I do like the, you know, hold government accountable and hold you know, hold the federal government to a smaller government. I am a big fan of that. So I think there's areas where we can lock arms and agree. So, well, thank you for having me on.
Dude, I had a good time.
Yeah, me too.